This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I cannot hear Dorothea or Bob. Could we do a sound check?
Okay,
you
I
hear
had
me
my
now?
mic up.
Okay. Can I hear Bob?
Can you hear me?
No, I
Can
can't.
anyone hear?
Can
Okay,
anyone-
all right.
We can
Okay.
hear you.
Okay, good. All right.
able to hear Renee?
She's got her mic off. So
I'm muted. I always mute because I live in a house with other people and it's always noisy.
Okay, I can hear you now.
No worries. No worries. Let's see. Should we give Dan a few minutes to do this?
Uh-oh. Sound check on Bob. I'm getting
he is moving. Sometimes the computer responds badly when he moves.
okay.
So
Is it better if I take this? Which is better?
Okay, whatever's better.
We'll try. Just make sure you're facing the computer. For some reason, when you
I know.
walk
I'm
in,
going to try to move my agenda over closer to the computer because I have a tendency to look straight. Take my notes straight. Computer. Both sides. See how that works.
you got to do an update on the computer or something.
Or we have to get
Okay.
the mayor to sit still.
Yeah, I don't sit still well. I'm like my dog.
We'll have to tape him into the chair. That's wrong.
Not gonna happen. I'm fidgety.
Okay.
All right. Well, we have a few, let's see. We've got a lot of stuff, so why don't we start again? Can join us as soon as he gets here. Everybody okay with that?
I
I don't think the thing. Is everybody okay if we start? I know Dan may be a few minutes late because he had other obligations, but can we go ahead and start?
but we don't have a quorum yet.
Yes, we do.
Oh,
We do. There's three.
Oh, there's
There's three of us here.
me.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'll make a motion to call the meeting to order. Do I have a second?
Stetzer second.
Thank you.
Lily,
Dorothea?
you're supposed to second.
Trustee Stetzer,
Aye.
Trustee Lampier,
Lanfear, aye.
Mayor Corby.
Corby, aye.
Motion
Okay,
passes.
does anyone have any conflicts of interest they would like to disclose?
I do not. Stetzer.
Nor do I. Okay. First item, can we get some of the minor things out of the way first? Could we approve the non-municipal use permit number 2 on the agenda for the library with the same conditions?
Bob, we're not hearing you.
No, not hearing you. Thank you. I thought it was me.
Okay.
I think he's looking to get the non-municipal use permit reviewed. and
Yeah,
approved.
that's right. I'm gonna put these back on. I think it works better.
Okay.
Because I know with the notes that I'm gonna look away and no, like that. Can you hear me now? Like when I'm.
We're
A little bit.
gonna have to do some sort of Morse code or something. That is a little better.
It is better with the microphone, but
Yeah.
It
we
is
gotta
better with a
work on it.
microphone. Okay,
We
I've got the mask on because I've got a mouthful of stitches again, so
Oh dear.
not much I can do about that. Okay, so non-municipal use. I'll make a motion to.
Bob, you're going in and out bad. Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
So oh, wait, it says use new,
Yeah,
is
hit that.
that better?
Yes, it's like you're landing on the moon. That sounds way better. Go ahead.
Okay, good. All right. So I made a motion to approve the non-municipal use permit for the library. Do I have a second?
Lampier, second.
Trustee
Dorothea,
Stetser,
Stetser, aye.
trustee Lampier,
Lampier, aye.
Mayor Corby.
Corby, aye.
Motion passes.
Do we need to say
Okay.
anything about that, given that Bob cut out for a little bit, or is it enough that we have the information in the packet?
The
We can let
information
them,
is in the packet, and my
Okay.
motion was in accordance with the same conditions we approved last year.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear that part. That's all good.
Yeah, that's technical difficulties. Okay, next item we
Okay.
have is a request for approval of a neighborhood block party. I'm sorry, I didn't read through this on the agenda, so just need to take a look. Questions, comments on the neighborhood block party?
It seemed fairly self-explanatory, and it'll be their responsibility to be socially distanced.
There was one resident who was concerned, Dennis, Dennis and Tricia were concerned about getting out of the neighborhood. And so I made a request to Jorge that they have a way so the street is never blocked. So if somebody needed to get through out to Monroe Avenue, they could get through out to Monroe Avenue. My understanding from my discussion with him via phone last night is that it would only block a small part of the street on the the Monroe Avenue end of Washington Avenue.
So you said you requested that just a little opening be left there, but I'm worried that someone's gonna sneak in the other direction from Monroe.
Uh, an opening so that there would be cones,
Okay.
but the cones could be picked up easily. So there aren't tables in the street or something. So if a car needed to get through, that it could get through.
Okay. As long as we
The other-
mark it very clearly from the Monroe side so that nobody turns into the party.
The other thing, and I live on the street, so I'm going to try to. I have no problems with the party, but I don't want to speak for the other residents on my street. It said there was a 75 yes. He didn't put Dennis and Tricia's names on there, so they may be opposed to it. So I just, I don't know if we've ever had a situation like this before where we didn't get 100% support. What does everybody think?
Well, are you recusing yourself because you live on the street? Is that what you just said? You cut out for a little bit. If that's the case, we have to wait until another trustee comes on so we can vote.
No, I don't think I have to recuse myself because I'm not proposing the party. As a resident of the street, I support having a party on my street, but I don't want to speak for other residents that may feel differently.
And you will look benefiting from the party. So I think
No, I'm not planning it. I'll probably go and attend because they are my neighbors, but I haven't had any role in the planning or organization of the party.
Okay, so I didn't, I'm looking through the agenda and didn't see the address, but you just said it's on your street?
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
so it's on the Monroe side of Washington, and do we need, I've never done one of these before. Do we need to provide anything to them, or do they provide all of their own, like, do we block off the street? How does it work?
Normally, we provide cones and we ask them to block off the street at an appropriate time and to remove the cones and clean everything up after it's done. Leave the cones somewhere where our crew can pick them up on Monday morning.
Okay, so we don't have any Jersey barriers or something bigger for them to use like what we use during
We-
a parade?
We do not. We have done things like this frequently in the past. Christ Episcopal Church for many years had a blessing of the animals ceremony in November where they closed off the block of Locust Street. I think it was Saturday afternoon between Rand Place and South Main Street, a very similar situation.
Okay. I love street parties. I wish I could block
I
off
do
my
too.
street.
I know, I do too. Renee, I have to tell you, I walked the dog a couple days ago and I love watching the cars stop. It made a big difference on that upper block of Sutherland Street with a new stop sign.
Yeah, I took a picture of it tonight. I witnessed it for the first time. We were walking the dog, and I went, "Why is everyone stopping here?" And I went, "Oh my God, the stop sign's up!" So I got a picture. Yeah, very excited. Baby steps. We'll take what we can get.
That's a big baby step. That's a good one. Okay. All right. We have would someone like to make a motion?
I think Dan just joined us, but I don't know if he's planning on voting or not.
Dan, we're talking about the proposed block party on Washington Avenue.
Yeah, I'll just abstain because I didn't hear the full conversation. I missed it, and I don't want you guys to repeat it. We have a full agenda tonight.
Okay. All right. Would someone like to make a motion?
I will. Go ahead, Lily.
I will make a motion that we approve the request. Is that what it is? It's not a non-municipal use permit. It's just a request.
It's a request to have a block party on Washington Avenue. Yeah.
That is my motion.
What is the
Okay,
date?
and I would
Do we need to say the date?
We have to, because it would be a non-municipal use permit. I would add to, with Lily's permission, that we waive the 45-day waiting period to allow this because of the date is Saturday this week, whatever, September 19th.
Correct. Okay. The motion has been amended. Motion is now for a non-municipal use permit with a waiver of the 45-day yes, with the waiver of the 45-day.
Okay. Would someone like to second that?
I will second it.
Dorothea, would you call a vote?
Before we vote, do we need to add a time period to that? And is there anyone else we need to inform?
He did inform all the emergency services.
Okay, great.
As
Perfect.
well as the building inspector. And the party
Awesome.
is held, he's opting to have the party between 5 p.m. or close the road between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. The party be between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. to
Okay.
allow clean up and
So
set up.
So we need to close it between 5 and 9. Okay, perfect.
It
Okay,
says here they're having there will be a group of 6 to 8 high top tables as well as 2 rectangular tables for food and drinks, potluck style. Residents are being asked to bring an appetizer and wine beer to share. There will be 2 registration tables, one at each end of Washington Avenue. I'm just wondering if we should ask them to arrange the tables again. So if somebody did have to go down the street for an emergency purpose or otherwise, someone needs to get out of their house, they can do that easily without someone moving a table with food or drink on it.
We have a second to this motion because I want to have a discussion about something.
yes,
Renee
I seconded it.
Yep.
We know what state local authority laws are regarding uncovered beverages or whatever term that they use out on the street that is not in an enclosed area. Do we know
Right.
what those?
I don't think any of that plays because you can't control that at a picnic or anything like that. So I don't think we have authority to control that at a block party.
Okay.
Would be my guess because they're not selling it. It's going to be under their jurisdiction to control it and keep kids.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that.
I think there is a village code though that you can't have an open container on the street. So technically, if someone is drinking an alcoholic beverage, it should be in a lawn, not in the public right of way. So I think that is a point. It's a legal point, and nobody's going to be there enforcing it. But I think we should at least make them aware of that law.
I would agree, because I have any liability on the village's part. So if we
Correct.
can approve a non-municipal use permit, I think that we need to make certain that they understand that would apply, that we are not approving a non-municipal use permit that allows alcoholic beverages on the public sidewalk.
Because there is an open container law in the village. Okay. Any other discussion on this item? Okay, if there is not, I'll ask for a vote.
Trustee Stetser,
Stetser, aye.
trustee Lampier,
Your eye.
Mayor Corby,
Corby, aye.
and trustee Keating, you're still abstained, right?
Abstain.
Thank you.
I'm going to move on. Again, Dan, I'm trying to get some of the minor items out of the way so we can tackle the bigger ones. I'm proposing a resolution. A few days ago, the Canal Corporation announced that they are closing the canal early this year on October 14th, which is a month and a half. The last few years, they've done it on November 15th. It used to be December 1st. This was a shortened season anyway because COVID reduced capacity of the commercial tour boats. The canal opening was delayed by almost 2 months. So this is another real hardship for businesses like the Sam Patch and the Colonial Bell and other operators that are losing part of their season because of this early closure. The Canal Corporation is claiming the closure is necessary to do the maintenance work that they did do under the COVID lockdown. At the request of the Sam Patch and the Colonial Bell, I'm proposing a resolution that we request the Canal Corporation to consider keeping our section of the canal anyway, open at least till sometime in November. Discussion?
How, you're proposing at least our section, but like once they start, like, can they do that? Have they ever, is there precedent for, I know they've left some of them open when they were doing repairs down by the marsh, or I don't remember which bridge it was, but when they had the barge out there.
Well, they aren't doing any major repairs that I'm aware of in our section. And this spring, when the canal opened, our section opened earlier than other sections where more significant work on locks was occurring.
Okay.
So to achieve the possibility of perhaps allowing us to have more time, even if they have to do work in other places, that's why I was suggesting we might only ask for our section between the Genesee River and Newark. And I say Newark because the hydrology, the water comes from the Genesee River and it basically goes into the Oswego River system between Palmyra and Newark.
Bob, did you make a motion or is this a resolution?
This would be a resolution, and I'm asking for some discussion if you agree. And if you do agree, then I'll ask for a second and we can approve a resolution.
Okay.
And the resolution
Well, I
hasn't,
agree with what you're proposing.
the resolution hasn't been written yet?
It hasn't been written yet. No, Dan.
Okay.
This I just received correspondence from Tammy Pinen today, which is included in your packet.
So we would be giving you permission to write a letter in support of Sam Patch and the Colonial Bell. Is that what we're
It would
proposed
authorize.
for our
would
section to
authorize-
be?
It would authorize the clerk and I to draft a resolution requesting the Canal Corporation and the New York State Power Authority leave the canal open till November 15th, at least for our local section to benefit all boaters and particularly the commercial tour boat operators.
Okay. Sounds reasonable.
Okay, all right. Any other discussion before we ask for a vote? All right, Dorothea, would you call a vote? Thank you.
Trustee Stetser,
Stetser, aye.
trustee Lampier,
Lanfear, aye.
trustee Keating,
Keating, aye.
Mayor Corby.
Corby, aye.
Motion
Next
passes.
item, next item we have is approval of a quote for holiday wreaths that has been procured by Lily Lampier. Lily, would you speak to that?
One question for you. Does this have to be done today? We have a hugely long agenda. Or is this the kind of thing that could wait till the next trustees meeting?
I think it's only going to take a minute to do it, Dan. I think we might as well just get it out of the way.
Yes, this is the same number of wreaths that we've had in the past years. And the
Lily, you're blacking out.
yes, you have to be, they're not, they will not return. So we are time. So the price really out. I'm sorry. How about now?
Yeah,
That's better.
Lily, one idea is turn off your
Can you hear me
camera.
now?
'Cause that ends up
We hear
chewing
you,
up
but
a lot of data. Because it's worth a try, or call in on a phone.
Yeah,
Because your
no, yeah.
audio is jamming up.
Okay, now try again, Lily. We're listening.
Try that.
No.
Okay, can you hear now?
That's, no,
Okay.
Yeah,
No,
sounds, try it
can't hear
again. We can hear you. Talk longer.
Okay, thank you. I will talk very quickly. It's the same order as last year. We must order them this week or we will not have the wreaths in time. The price has gone up slightly. It's about between $2 to $3 per wreath higher, and you have the quote in front of you. It was part of the packet, and I'm asking for approval so that the order can be placed.
Does anyone remember off the top of their head what we budgeted for this? Is this within the budget?
It is within budget.
Yes, I checked with Mary, and it is well within the budget. We put had even it's all in one category. The decorations are all in one category, and this is just one small portion of it. I think we had something like 12,000 in the budget, and this is 1,078 for the
Okay.
wreaths.
Great. And we can hear you perfectly now that you shut off your camera, by the way.
Oh, okay, that works for me.
Okay. The next item is an
We
emergency
did-
item.
Do we have to approve it?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you. So did someone make a motion? I'll make a motion to approve the quote for wreaths for 2020. Do I have a second?
Stetser second.
Dorothea, would you call a vote?
trustee Stetser,
Stetser, aye.
trustee Lampier,
Lanfear, aye.
trustee Keating,
Keating, aye.
Mayor Corby.
Corby, aye. One last
Motion passes.
housekeeping issue, and that is approval of, Zach did 2 write-ups to allow the work to proceed on emergency repairs at 28 Monroe Avenue and 85 South Street. They were included in your packet. Does anybody have any questions about the work that needs to be done? Okay, since there are none, I'll make a motion to approve proceeding with work in accordance with the quotes that Zach has received for 28 Monroe Avenue and 85 South Street.
I will
Do I have a
second.
second? All in
Lanfear.
favor? Oh,
Trustee Stetser,
Dorothea, roll call vote, sorry. Old habits.
Stetser, aye.
trustee Lampier,
Lanfear, aye.
trustee Keating,
Keating, abstain.
May
Okay,
we have
Corby.
the reason for the abstention, please?
Corby, aye.
It didn't come over in time for me to read it, so
Okay.
I don't have an opinion on it. It came over late and I had a busy day.
No
Okay.
worries.
Duly noted.
motion passes.
Okay. Now we can dig into the more substantive issues on our agenda. The first thing we have is a review of the comments received from the PZBA as part of their LWRP review of the active transportation plan. Okay. Do you want to just go through this page by page?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to make note of the two areas or the two policies that the planning board determined the ATP was inconsistent with at the ATP in its current form. That way we have some context as we go through this, but I don't know if you want to start with that first or if we want to just jump right in.
Either way, either way.
So the first
was that in the back? I'm trying to remember where
that was in.
was.
So last week, I didn't send the resolution along, the draft resolution that the planning board put in their packet at that last meeting, because it's just a draft. So, but I think it's important to note that the two reasons, or at least the two policies, and I have it. Can I just read it off of here, or do you all?
Yeah, go ahead,
Okay.
Renee, please.
All right. So the first one is 121-5.g, which is foster a pattern of development in the LWRP area that incorporates the design guidelines contained in Section 5 of the LWRP, and which enhances community character, preserves open space, makes efficient use of infrastructure, makes beneficial use of the waterfront location, and minimizes adverse effects of development, which is LWRP Policy 1, takes advantage of the community's location on the canal to provide amenities for residents and visitors, and guides future development so that it complements, not competes with, or detracts from the historic village. And their finding in their draft resolution was that in its current form, it is inconsistent with the policy because per page 1, paragraph 1 of the Active Transportation Plan, the Pittsford Active Transportation Plan aims to develop a thorough strategy to guide the future of active transportation in both the town and village. However, the plan does not provide for improved access to the canal and does not provide for improved canal corridor amenities. The LWRP stipulates that access and connectivity must be improved. Per LWRP, quote, canal corridor amenities shall be maintained and improved. And then they say to see the attached Pittsford Village Planning Board considerations, which is the big document that you have before you for more in-depth reasons for that. And then the other inconsistency was LWRP Policy 11, provide for Number 10, provide for public access to and recreational use of coastal waters, public lands, and public resources of the LWRP area. They find that the action is inconsistent with the policy because per page 1, paragraph 1 of the Active Transportation Plan, the Active Transportation Plan aims to develop a thorough strategy to guide the future of active transportation in both the town and village. However, the plan does not provide for improved access to the canal. Am I repeating myself? Nope, that's right. Sorry, sounds a little redundant. It does not provide for improved canal corridor amenities. The LWRP stipulates that access and connectivity must be improved. Per LWRP, canal corridor amenities shall be maintained and improved, and then see the list of details for why they find that the ATP and its supplement in its current form are inconsistent. So those are the two policies, the LWRP guidelines that they feel it's inconsistent with. So then we can dive into this. And it should be noted that the Active Transportation Plan in its original draft did not mention the LWRP. It did not include the LWRP under its policies. So the steering committee did add it in the supplement. So that's a huge missing piece of the vision of who we are. And I don't know why it wasn't included. I don't know if the mayor might
I
know
think
why.
it was an oversight. I think it was an oversight by the consultant.
Okay.
It should have been included, and as I've said before, I think, and we'll find that as we work through these recommendations, that there's almost nothing in here that I don't agree with, and I think
Yeah.
all of us probably feel that way. So again,
Yep.
I'd express thanks to the members of the planning board for the thorough job they did in doing this consistency review, because it's going to make a better plan in the long run.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So
Right.
let's begin. Okay. I have no objections to the different translation that's proposed in for the first page after the cover.
Hey, actually, can I make a suggestion? Since we have a short timeline for the LWRP, that we do the two documents that were in there. I think in the order that they were put in there was the memo to us, which from August 11th
That's the
has
one.
more. Yeah, that has broader things in it, more general things, as I understand it, and as I review it for the plan in general. I think we should start with that second piece, which is their comments on the LWRP waterfront consistency review itself. That way we get that done. If we get bogged down in discussion, at least we're focused on the LWRP, and then we can maybe do the other general comments another time.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay.
So if you're following along at home in your packets, it's that second piece that starts with Pittsford Village Planning Board ATP considerations per LWRP, August 24th, 2020. So sorry, I should have had you put those in there in reverse order, Dorothea, when I sent them over.
Okay. All right. So let's start on page 51. Permeable pavement should be used to mitigate environmental impact of increased surface runoff and to decrease formation of dangerous black ice during cold weather.
Okay.
My only comment here is it should be where it's feasible, because there are certain situations where permeable pavement won't work. For example, curb ramps, because of ADA requirements, they require a tactile surface to notify blind persons of an impending crossing of a street. So I think I would add the words where feasible.
Wait, I'm sorry to interrupt again. Did we just say we were going to do the LWRP considerations first?
Yep.
Then we need to then skip down even further, Mayor Corby.
Oh, okay. All right.
Those are,
I thought that's where you meant.
No, those are still the comments. These are also valuable. However, I think we need to focus on the LWRP feedback first.
You mean, so you want the August 24th sheet? Is that the one you're looking at?
Yep, that's
Okay.
the one.
Okay.
I think that way
You said August 11th. That's why I was confused. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay.
So it starts with it says Pittsford Village Planning Board ATP considerations for the LWRP at the top. Okay. So do you want me to read along, or do you want to, how do you want to handle this?
Okay, I'll read along.
Okay.
The town and village will identify potential conflict areas where vehicular and pedestrian interaction occurs and upgrade pedestrian movements to an equal or greater priority than vehicular movements. Traffic calming mechanisms will be incorporated into the existing street network to reduce the potential for vehicular and pedestrian conflict. Such mechanisms include curb bump outs, paving textural changes, signage, pedestrian crosswalks, incorporation of stop signs and lights where appropriate and beneficial, and the incorporation of pedestrian-friendly streetscape elements to further separate vehicles and pedestrians. Recommendations. Amend the ATP as appropriate to implement crosswalks that are visually and/or texturally different from the roadway to enhance pedestrian safety and calm traffic.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Renee. You can comment first.
The ATP recommendations already mentioned visual and textural design considerations under the recommendations for pedestrian intersection crossing treatments on page 61. It details high visibility crosswalks, and then on page 62, it lists tactile yield cues, and other treatments, which are just that. They're different textural designs. And then on page 63, textured and colored contrasting pavement is recommended. And then page 63, it talks about transverse pavement markings, and page 96 underscores that pedestrian crossings should go beyond standard application and be enhanced for full awareness by drivers. So I feel like we've got that recommendation covered in the ATP already.
I agree. Any other discussion? Okay, I'll move on. Where appropriate, the town and village should incorporate bike lanes along its streets or off-road bicycle and pedestrian paths to link residential areas with village and town activity centers, recreational amenities, the canal and trail networks. Recommendations are amend the ATP purpose and goals to include improve access to the canal. Currently, the ATP includes goals for improving access to schools, connecting the village to Pittsford Plaza, traffic calming, etc. Goals are mentioned in the ATP in multiple sections, including page 4, page 37, page 38. The ATP does not address connectivity to the Erie Canal, and this is a substantial improvement that is needed. Village connectivity to the Erie Canal needs to improve, and town residential neighborhoods near the canal need improved access. There's examples cited.
So I feel the ATP covers improved access and connectivity to the Erie Canalway Trail because they didn't look at the waterway itself, which is how you access the canal if you're traveling by foot and car. I'm totally fine with adding improved access to the canal to the plan, but it should be noted that the ATP was not a study of the canal. This was about, it should be noted that the ATP was not a study of the waterway itself and the canal beyond the trail and street infrastructure. So I think improving access to the canal is fine to add, as long as we acknowledge they didn't do a deep dive on it, the canal itself, because this was a broader look.
Okay. On the next page, appropriate alternative modes of transportation such as buses, trolleys, water shuttle, and taxi, among others, should be identified and implemented to reduce the number of automobile trips and to accommodate high peaks of pedestrian movement. Park and ride lots, bus shelters, and other commuter services should be planned into the construction and rebuilding of larger commercial areas. As the traffic increases, the use of alternative modes of transportation will be essential as part of a regional solution to the transit problems facing the greater Pittsford area. Recommendation: the ATP should address improvements to allow for high peaks of pedestrian movement, particularly at the Erie Canal bridges. These need significant improvements to accommodate heavy pedestrian and bicycle travel. Note, this recommendation is supported by multiple citations in the LWRP. Improving access to the canal is vitally important. The 3 bridges in Pittsford Village inadequately support bicyclists and pedestrians, and improvements are needed. For instance, wider sidewalks and bike lanes are needed on all bridges. The Monroe Avenue Bridge and North Main Street Bridge have unnecessary center lane striping that can be removed to create space for wider sidewalks and/or bike lanes. The State Street Bridge lacks center lanes and has a 7 to 8 foot wide sidewalks, but no bike lanes. Did you want to comment, Renee, or do you want me to comment?
You can start and I'll jump in. I have some notes, but go ahead.
Renee and I have been pushing this topic for several years in our meetings with DOT. But I think the one thing I think that's missing in the comment from the planning board is that we are bound, for better or for worse, we do not have control over the design standards that the New York State Department of Transportation uses. And I fully agree that that striped space in the middle, we've said that for years, is wasteful. But we need to also acknowledge that we are subject to the restrictions of the DOT's engineering design standards. Renee?
So I've got a lot to say about this because our bridges, as you just mentioned, our bridge infrastructure is horrible for cyclists and pedestrians. The North Main Street Bridge we all know that all three of them are inadequate. And the ATP clearly identifies these bridges, which are also where non-motorized users connect from our streets to the canal and the trail, as trouble spots, and it offers various design considerations. So it identifies strategies to allow us to explore reallocation of space on our bridges to better accommodate everyone. On page 93, reallocate roadway and public realm space and keep travel lanes and lane widths to a minimum. Those apply to finding more space for sidewalks and bike lanes. And page 96 underscores that pedestrian crossing should go above and beyond standard application. I believe the ATP supports any advocacy that we would undertake for changes to our bridges. I also agree with the planning board that we should add something to underscore the need to redesign our bridges with pedestrians and cyclists in mind, given that we have the State Street Rehabilitation Project and other resurfacing projects coming up that offer an opportunity for us to make some design changes. I don't think it would hurt to underscore how important our bridges are to the connectivity to the Canalway Trail and the canal. And then basic connectivity, it's at the heart, those are at the heart of our village to getting to other places, even if you're not going to the canal. So I don't know about, setting specific requirements beyond what NATCO and, we need to do for ADA compliance as well. But I think we should underscore given what the repairs and resurfacing heading our way, it would not hurt to underscore how inadequate our bridges are right now.
I think it might be worth introducing some more language here, because I think realistically, I think we can all agree that the design standards that the DOT uses for determining, how when they turn into a turning pocket, how gradual that turn is or turning radius is, they design them for speeds much higher than the optimal traveling speed we would want in a village center. I suspect that's something that over time will evolve downward as urban speed limits are brought down. And somehow we need to articulate that we should continue to push on this topic. So as we can afford to make progress with cooperation from the DOT, we can do that, because we've tried many times already, and we've always been told, no, we need to have these standard striping things. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because in my professional experience, the best plans are realistic, and you don't put in things that are simply unachievable. And I just want to make sure we have all the language that accurately describes what needs to be done here to achieve the goal.
Okay, so what is the best way as we go through this? What is our strategy for getting back to the planning board with these comments, and are we incorporating them in the supplement? Are we trying to add them to the actual physical document before we move to approval, or how are we going to address the two biggest LW?
I think we go through all the comments tonight. I think this is another comment I think we agree in. After we've gone through all the comments and verified that we support them, then we can talk about a process for folding them into the plan. Otherwise, it's just gonna take too long. Don't you agree?
Okay, sounds good. So you want to get through this, and you also skipped a whole. You skipped a whole section on Bob Ford Field and let's see, Sutherland High School. It was under the examples in the previous LWR section 3, pages 3 and 4. Did you mean to skip those?
I just
Examples?
assumed we'd agreed with them. Do you have anything else to add on those?
Let's see. I had a couple questions that I don't know if we have them clarify it now or if we do it at a subsequent meeting. I think we, at the last meeting, decided we would get through all of these and then we would meet with them again to go over it. Or since we have some of them here, I didn't know if we could ask them now.
Why don't we do it now since we have a few members that have tuned in?
Okay.
Real quick.
Yep.
Real quick. I have a member of the public asking if they can say something. Are we entertaining the public tonight?
Could we hold it to the end just so we can get through this and then we will take questions from the public?
I will let them
Just
know.
'cause
Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay,
My
Renee,
que-
do you want to ask a question?
yes, under the LWRP section 3, pages 3 and 4, on the second example bullet says connect bicycle boulevards to canal, and I needed a little clarification on it. There aren't any suggested bike boulevards that are adjacent to the canal, so those bike boulevards have to eventually connect with our main roads to get to the trail. So I wasn't sure what they were talking about there. I don't know if anyone from the planning board can jump in.
Anybody? Would you have to unmute yourself?
This is
Nope.
Dave Marshall.
Hey, Dave.
Hi, how's everybody?
Good.
So that particular line item, throughout the village, there was various boulevards that in the mapping, it looked like they were a little disjointed and didn't reflect on consistency through the main roads. So the way the maps came across, it was as though you kind of had these disjointed bike boulevards that were highlighted on the map, but that didn't actually connect to anything or give definitive comment as to a bike lane existing on the main thoroughfares. So the idea is in the LWRP, in the ATP, would one be able to suggest the goal of having that bike boulevard persist on the main road and be referenced as such to further encourage the bikeability on the main roads? Because some of the comments in the ATP kind of suggested to getting people off the main roads. And so it's great if it's safe, but the quickest way to the canal is on Main Street or State Street or Monroe, right?
Right.
And I think what that comment intended to do was to try to encourage reflection of getting all those boulevards to have better connection to the canal rather than just ending at a main road, almost color coordinating it through that.
Gotcha. Well, a bike.
Dave,
Yeah.
A bike.
what I was going to say is during our discussion with the consultants, I think they were a little bit conservative about hesitant to put bike boulevards on the main streets because of our current traffic speed and traffic volume issue.
A bike
think-
boulevard is not. Bike boulevard is specifically something that's on a low traffic street to get you around. It makes it sound like it's a bike route, but a bike boulevard is specifically a designated route to get you off of a main thoroughfare to give you a safer way around it. So you don't put a bike boulevard is
isn't
not
it
on a
also-
major arterial. You don't put, so it connects. So you try to get people off of South Main Street, you give them a safer way to go by designating a bike boulevard, and then it connects to other bike infrastructure. But a bike boulevard by definition is on a low traffic street.
Isn't it also like a protected bike lane? Isn't that also a bike boulevard if there's like a median between the bike lane and the traffic lane?
You're thinking of a cycle track? I know it's all confusing.
No,
I think
I'm thinking of a protected bike lane where there's a curb that actually
Right.
separates the bike lane from the traffic lane.
a bike boulevard in the definition of this study is one that is on a low traffic street to allow you to get around. So you have a section when you can give people another way to go. Ideally, you would have a protected bike lane down your major thoroughfares so that you wouldn't have to skirt around to go on these quieter streets. But so that explains what looks like it's disjointed when it's really not. A bike boulevard is not on a major
It's not.
thoroughfare. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just that in, so that's all very good.
Okay.
Then with regard to the maps that illustrate the bike boulevards and how, do we have a map then on the main roads that reflects the goals of having designated bike lanes to get us down to the canal, different than what I'm just trying to remember if there was a map that did that or if it was just embedded in text.
I'm trying to pull it up
I
right
don't
now
think
to
there is.
pull up the map. Yeah, I think it was just, it's embedded in text, but I will
Yeah.
double check.
Okay.
So
So
so basically you want to see a bike route that shows you like, here you go on Sutherland here, and then you hop on Monroe to get to the canal is what you're saying. You'd like to see that on a map.
It felt, yeah, but I mean, that's not absolutely necessary given your clarification right there, but it did feel as though the desirability in the ATP to reflect on ensuring safe bike traffic on the main arteries was insufficient to get us to the canal as safely as what we could have. At least that's my sort of thought. But the definition of the bike boulevard there and why that map looks that way is helpful.
Okay. Additional access points to the canal. We talked about that, I think. Did you want to ask anything else, Renee, about this section?
The additional access points to the canal. Hold on, I've got so many darn windows up. I'm trying to find my notes. Additional access. Okay. Oh, Bob Ford Field. So when you were referring to the plans in the LWRP for Bob Ford Field, what specifically about pedestrian and bike access were you referring to? Because the Bob Ford Field recommendations focus on improving boat access while protecting and respecting the residential setting. So currently, pedestrians and cyclists can safely get to the fields from our village infrastructure. So I just wanted to know if you could elaborate on what we're supposed to be looking at specifically, as was a concern about Bob Ford Field.
That was more of is there the opportunity to connect the canal? So through the ATP, is there an opportunity to connect the canal, like the walker or the biker, to access points to get onto the canal at those locations?
But there isn't a trail on that side. So
Correct.
you just want to be on there for a lookout or to have a picnic or something like that?
To get into boats, for example, human-powered water transportation. Or with regards to the Sutherland High School, coming from Sutherland, getting down onto the canal to then subsequently walk over the Monroe Bridge to get onto the canal trail. It felt as though to us that there could have been additional references to encouraging that canal access. And the LWRP references some of those ideas.
So you mean beyond the fact that if you're on Sutherland, if you live in that neighborhood, you just walk over the bridge and get on to the canal right there after the bridge. That's not considered access.
Dave, are you talking about boat launching opportunities? Like
Yeah,
for a
boat
kayak
launching
or something?
opportunities. Yeah, boat launching at Bob Ford Field.
Okay.
Possibility.
Okay. Mhm.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
and
So
right
this
now-
is.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, so you're not focused on the bike, that you're talking about the non-motorized, having access to non-motorized vehicles, which we're going to cover further down in here. So that's what Bob Ford Field and access on that side of the canal by Sutherland was referring to?
Yeah, the Sutherland access, I don't recall specifically if that was in the same context as Bob Ford Field. So I will.
Okay. Was that access to Kings Bend Park? Because there is a utility trail that's proposed along to get people from off Jefferson Road and to Kings Bend Park, which was also one of the other destinations I think you all mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we can move on.
Okay, all right. All right, anything on page 71 for canal access improvements in the town?
I had a question about that. What does that mean? Were you referring to the sidewalk or multi-use trail that's suggested along East Jefferson Road from Graylock Ridge? Is that the one? And again, is that about the access to Bob Ford Field?
Have to look. See page, ATP page 71. For canal access improvements in town.
And the improvements in the town are beyond our village purview, but it's.
Yes, and I respect that. So I would probably move on, and if we want clarification.
Okay, and we can put that maybe in the broader list of suggestions.
I'd rather, Renee, do you have a couple comments as to the third bullet that you're going to share with our board, that better bike lanes to and from the canal along major routes? So again, this just goes back to, do you have some reference points within the ATP that the board will share with us as to why they feel it adequately addresses the main arteries and bike transportation, specifically along the bridges? Is that the language that you guys are going to work on?
For the third,
on
the right that the mayor just mentioned about coming up. Yes, I think we need some stronger language there. Right now, we don't have any bike lanes at all. We have one bike boulevard, and that's down on Shane Place. So we have a lot of different design choices that would slow traffic and make it safer for cyclists. So some of the recommendations that we would put in place, like if there happen to be pedestrian refuge islands or medians that help calm traffic, that may determine what type of bike infrastructure we would put in there through our, on the bridges through, the dog is just laid down on my computer. Sorry about that. I lost all my notes. Crap. I don't remember what I was talking about because the dog blanked out my bike lanes. Okay, I'm going to pull up my notes. Maybe someone else could take over for a second while I pull up my notes because I've completely become
we have one that runs through Shane Place.
Yep. Shane.
We're talking about bike lanes along the main streets.
Yes, I gotcha. Bike lanes on oh gosh, but I need my notes because I don't remember what we were talking about specifically. You asked if we were going to put better language or work on the language about the bridges specifically to get us to the canal, and about bike infrastructure on our arteries, right? Yeah. Arterials.
Yeah.
And depending on how we calm traffic, that will depend on the type of infrastructure that we put in, because we could find out that we calm traffic enough with, as I mentioned, medians, or if the state DOT comes as part of their pedestrian improvement projects that they're doing right now and ends up putting a bump out somewhere, that may make us have to move the type of design we would put in. So
do you know the answer to this question?
Yeah.
Do bike lanes?
No, I don't know.
Yeah, right. I don't know the question. Let me phrase it. Do bike lanes by themselves, if placed on major arteries, by the narrowing of the space by which vehicles can travel, do they have a natural slowing effect, independent from whether or not they're in use at the time?
Yes, by striping alone can, but what you want to narrow the traffic lanes, and put additional striping, even if no one's using that, just the visual cues of that will calm traffic. That being said, there is all sorts of data that shows that the safest infrastructure for a cyclist is protected infrastructure, and that's when you start to get less confident riders out on the road. That shouldn't mean we don't take an interim step as we change the culture to put painted bike lanes out. And the advantage of painted bike lanes, particularly through our main corridors, is that we have an emergency services team that has to get through those areas, and that means we have to do a little more thoughtful planning so that we don't impact their ability to get through there safely.
And
So
The irony is when I was a kid, the town went ahead and striped all the main routes through the town with bike lanes. And then those were abandoned eventually, but it had been done before, including all the major routes through the village had striped bike lanes on every street, every state road that came through the village. So that's very
yeah,
unfortunate.
they probably
I
added
think the
more
other,
traffic lanes.
well, the other unfortunate thing here that I just want to explain to everyone is that when we work with DOT, they're often, if we try to request a crosswalk, for example, their view is, well, how many people currently cross the street there? Is there really a need? And the obvious answer is all this works in concert. So when you put the crosswalk in, more people are going to cross the street. And so there's always this chicken and the egg scenario with DOT that inhibits progress towards a more walkable environment. All right, can we move on to policy 1.5?
Yeah.
Did we see anything, Renee? We're okay. Okay.
Bob, what you
Canal
just outlined-
corridor.
Bob, what you just outlined there sounds like a solvable problem. So I don't think it has to be that way forever.
No, I that's why we're working on it. I agree. Okay, improved canal corridor. Yep. Yes.
Oh, I was going to make
Renee?
sure Dave got his question answered because I had a little bit of a kerfuffle in the middle there. See, I'm terrible at extemporaneous speaking. Dave, did we answer your question about paint?
yes, and to that end, it simply speaks to that better bike lanes to and from the canal along the major routes, and having language in the ATP that maybe, in our view, doesn't just defer to what the DOT allows now, but rather reflects a vision of what we would hope. And if the DOT chooses to disregard it, so be it. At least
It's aspiration.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
an aspirational statement that, while it would be nice for the plan to have action items, I recognize that some elements of the plan may not be actionable given the DOT's current perspective. But if the ATP is on file with our village for the next 15 to 20 years, it'd be nice for it to be aspirational in some regard for things that you don't necessarily think you can accomplish today.
Yes, I agree. So working that goes back to Mayor Corby when we work on that language about, particularly about the bridges and the heart of the village, maybe underscoring that bike infrastructure a little bit more. I know a lot has evolved since the scope of this work was done, and I think we have a lot more people in tune to it and a lot more people biking and walking, but particularly biking. So we'll probably have more support for that infrastructure. And there are some things that put, there are some recommendations in the ATP about ideas for the four corners as well to help cyclists get more safely through the intersection too. So I don't know if we want to highlight that, but.
Okay, let's move on to recommendations for policy 1.5. I think in terms of, I'm just going to highlight the recommendations because we've all read.
Yes.
Right. The ATP needs to address improvements to the canal corridor amenities as specified in the LWRP. The ATP plans should include access for canoes, non-motorized boaters, evaluate potential ice skate amenities, and access in the winter. A recreational component of this LWRP is to provide public access to and recreational use of the canal, public lands and public resources in the canal corridor. The canal area opportunities and proposals described in the inventory and analysis illustrate Pittsford's commitment to improving access along the corridor and throughout the community. Comments?
So, Lily, do you want to go first? You had your hand up.
Thank you. This is back. I have to circle back regarding the bike lanes and the bridge and the bridges, most particularly, well, not just State Street, but also the North Main Street Bridge. And that is if we put it, this is my question, if it is placed in the ATP as a requirement or this is our goal, how does that affect the width, the sidewalk width? when there's only so much room, will it be at sacrifice? Will the sacrifice be the width of the sidewalks? How do we work that into the ATP so that the wording is such that it's not, we, our goal is to narrow the lane of the highway for the traffic. They might not see it that way. May say we have to take these 2 feet from somewhere. We're going to take it from the sidewalk in order to establish these bike boulevard or bike lane. So is there a way to adjust the language so that it's not at the sacrifice of the sidewalk width?
I think that I mentioned it earlier, the term that's in here in the recommendations is on page 93, reallocate roadway and public realm space. That's the term we want to say because we don't know yet. If we put a median in the middle of North Main Street, it may do what we intended it to do and calm traffic enough that actually we may not need a bike lane, or we may find out that if we put a median in there, then we can't get a protected bike lane. And that's why so much of this language is considerate and not, study feasibility of instead of exactly what we're supposed to do, because we need to go before the public and get input, and we need to actually study an actual section of the road before we do something heavy duty, like assume the protected bike lane is the answer on that particular section of the road. So I think saying reallocate roadway and public realm space, which is what's in the plan right now, is better language. I mean, we aspire to have protected infrastructure everywhere. That's not always going to be possible. So we want to give ourselves the best design for how our users are using the street. And I don't know if that makes any sense.
Okay. Yes, it does. I just wanted it to not be, we worded in such a way that it was not at the cost of other public pedestrian space.
Yeah.
Bikers or walkers.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for clarification.
Okay, I think we can skip past policy 2. Does everybody agree with that?
Wait, hold on. Was that the one we were just on?
Oh, this is preservation historic resources of the coastal area.
Hold on, we didn't address the other one about the waterways, did we?
Oh, no. Okay, you're right.
Okay. Okay, now I got to scroll back. You were on policy 9.1, is that right? No, where were you? Shoot.
1.5.
1.5. Okay. So the recommendation is that it needs to, that we should underscore non-motorized boat use and ice skate amenities and things like that. And I wanted to clarify the purpose of an active transportation plan, which is to establish strategies to provide safer and more convenient options for biking, walking, and public transit. So its focus is on street infrastructure and trails that connect to those streets. So that conflicts with vehicles, my apologies. So, I mean, our biggest conflicts are vehicles, and that's why we're doing an active transportation plan. We're trying, and so the place where we have those conflicts are on our streets, where our infrastructure is. And so the purpose of an active transportation plan is pedestrian and bike infrastructure on our streets and our trails, which connect to our streets. So at one of the previous, so we didn't look at, for the active transportation, we didn't look at kayaking as a form of active transportation. And I tried to find a active transportation plan in the country that did incorporate that. I looked at Canandaiguas, I looked at all the lakes in New York. And, that's it's kind of a separate entity. We're looking at pedestrian and bike infrastructure on our streets and trails. So one of the planning board members at one of the meetings recommended that we have a statement deferring all water and ice recreation planning to the LWRP. And we put that somewhere up top in the active transportation plan. And I think that's a really good suggestion, rather than trying to dive into how we're going to address non-motorized boating as active transportation.
I agree. Okay. Now can we move on to policy 3? And I think there's, let's see, is that a recommendation, 3.1? Intrusive artificial light sources may be a concern. Ensure that any lighting installed is dark sky compliant, has a color between 2700 and 3000 Kelvin, and is otherwise consistent. I don't think we really dealt with lighting.
There's some suggestions of bridge lighting and things like that, but wouldn't that be covered under our code? I mean, anything new that would come in would have to get approved. So do we need to add that? I'm going to defer to you, Mayor Corby, or
I don't think it's
Lily.
I don't think it's harmful. I think what the PZBA is getting at is we want a quality of a full spectrum lighting, and you know, it's good for safety, it's good for ambience. I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, so I'm taking notes. You want me to just say we agree with this one?
Yeah, we agree.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
All right. Policy 4, not applicable, they said. Okay. Policy 5. The state and local goal of the LWRP is to take advantage, let's see, of improvements to the properties, facilities, and structures within the canal corridor. Will any pavement expansion increase runoff into the canal? Will this water be filtered? Can our stormwater system be improved? I don't think there's any real pavement expansion proposed as part of the ATP, is there, Renee?
I mean, unless we're adding, wider, well, we have wider sidewalks and more trails added, but this didn't, the study, I think this is beyond the scope of the study. It didn't look at the type of materials to be used or suggesting any of that or green infrastructure beyond, those that are related to the good things that come from increased transportation over using automobiles. So I don't know if I have no opinion on this one. But
anyone, like, for example, we've been working with DOT to get a slight sidewalk extension, which they're going to build for us on State Street. That doesn't drain into the canal, number one, because it's on the north side. Number two, the amount of area that would be increased due to any of those proposed changes is extremely small. Consult engineer to determine whether sidewalk expansion will impact stormwater. Again, I would say the area we're talking about is so slight that and in many cases it would be pushing the sidewalk into area that's now asphalt. So the potential impact is almost negligible. Sidewalks, prefer previous or permeable pavement where practical. I think we all do that, or do prefer that. Sidewalks take a particular beating because of snow plowing. I don't know if permeable pavement is available currently in sidewalks, but that's something that we could look into. I don't know that it is. It's available for asphalt parking, but I haven't seen it used for sidewalks. Have you, Renee?
They've got some in the town of Brighton, and I remember when we did a walking audit of the 12 corners there, their DPW director said they were having some trouble because some of the private lots will use salt, and you're not supposed to use salt and some other things, and they're actually having some trouble with that permeable sidewalk that they put in on Monroe Avenue. So I think we're going to need to do some research before providing some recommendations there, and that is way out of my wheelhouse.
Well, the other thing I would add to that is the town of Pittsford salts the state highways. We don't have control over the amount of salt they use, which is often excessive. So that is something we should look into. Follow best practices for integration of audible.
What are the notes we want to put here? Are we saying we think this doesn't need to be included at this time?
Well, I think we could, as technology changes or materials changes, to keep abreast of more environmentally sensitive options. That's what I would say. I mean, I think the engineering for it is beyond the scope of this study, but I think as new materials become available, the village has a responsibility to investigate and use them where appropriate. Agree?
Yeah, I don't know that needs to be in our active transportation plan, though. Isn't that governed by some? Okay. I don't.
It's a little bit outside the scope, but I don't think any of us opposed to anything like that. All right, can I move on to the next bullet? Follow best practices for integration of audible pedestrian signals with the village environment. I thought that was in there.
Yeah, what is this referring to noise pollution? I can't tell if the focus of this bullet is adding audible signals or adding them in the village environment. Meaning, are they afraid they're going to be too loud, or
Are we on
are
number
they?
6 right now?
We are on number
Policy
5.
4.
Oh.
Oh, policy 5.
Policy
Thank you.
5
Yep.
Policy 5. All right. Hang on a second.
about the audible signals.
Oh, yeah, we didn't have any best practice there. We just knew that, did we want to have a call button? Did we want to have big, loud crosswalks that, beeped at us when it was okay to cross versus just something that's visual like we have now? And that's where, we didn't have a lot of insight as much as it was a topic of our discussion. And I didn't know if there was a comment that was necessary or helpful to put into the ATP as to how to address pedestrian signaling.
How about, I think that the key thing is safety. Recently, Renee and I have talked to DOT about changing the timing of the lights at the four corners. And DOT has suggested they would consider providing a lead time. Right now, when you cross the street, people also have a green turning arrow. And so there's conflicts, and often you nearly get hit by cars. They've suggested to us that we asked that they would have a red arrow, so when you cross the street, you don't have to worry about a car bumping into you or cutting in front of you or behind you. I think the safety is the issue that I would want to capture with this bullet.
We agree.
Renee? Yeah, okay, good. Did you capture that, Renee?
That we want the safety of, oh my gosh, my dog is out of this world crazy right now. The safety aspect of audible pedestrian signals is what you want to communicate there?
It wouldn't necessarily have to be audible. It's
Just
we
any
want
pedestrian signals.
we want to abide by the safest practices possible for pedestrian lights. I think that's what the planning board is getting
Okay,
at.
the safest practice possible is not making you have to push a button, as having them automatically come on, which we're battling DOT about right now. But yeah,
Let's
I
say
think that's already in the active transportation plan. It's at the very it's in the recommendations to get rid of the big buttons, I believe. So let me find the reference. But let's move on. I'll add it to my notes.
Okay, policy 6. Planning board's recommendation is more pedestrian transportation is beneficial to the environment. The more people walk, the fewer cars there are, the less pollution there is. I think we agree with that. Everybody okay with that? Yes? Okay, I'm assuming that's a yes. Policy 7, the recommendation is more pedestrian transportation is beneficial to the environment. We agree with that. Policy 8, there's no recommendation. Policy 9, there's no recommendation. Policy 9.1, the recommendation states, the ATP does not address connectivity to the Erie Canal, and this is a substantial improvement that is needed. Village connectivity to the Erie Canal needs to improve, and town residential neighborhoods near the canal need improved access to the canal, i.e. the Sutherland neighborhood and the north side of Monroe Avenue do not have adequate connections for bicyclists or pedestrians to the canal. That was, Renee, that was the connectivity issue to the canal again. I think we addressed that before.
Okay, I will catch up. Go ahead.
I just read the recommendation for policy 9.1, which talks about improving connectivity to the canal. I think we've already addressed that. Agreed, everybody?
Yes, we did. We spoke about Bob Ford Field and the possibility of having a ramp or similar for kayaks and canoes, and also on the near 75 Monroe area as well for Sutherland to be able to reach the canal frontage from Monroe Avenue. Right?
Okay,
We spoke about
increase
that.
the width. Yes, yes. So let's move it on to the next recommendation. Increase the width of bicycle lanes to ensure that bicyclists of all skill levels are able to safely use them. High traffic roads should have buffered bicycle lanes that are 6 to 8 feet wide or a dedicated mixed use path depending on traffic speed. As access to the canal is primarily by way of bridges, special attention should be paid to ensure their safety for pedestrians and bicyclists. This is of particular importance in terms of access to the canal path. It is a heavily used bicycle path. 8-foot wide sidewalks should be the goal on village bridges, along with a buffered bicycle lane as space allows. Refer to LWRP policies and AASHTO guidelines. We tried to get 8-foot lanes on the State Street Bridge, but we were not successful.
8-foot sidewalks, you mean?
Yeah.
That battle is not over yet.
Correct. Okay.
This is
Glad to hear
addressed
you
by
say
that reallocation of roadway and public realm space, getting back to what Lily was saying about we only have a finite amount of space, and before we take away from one amenity or the other, I think we need to keep with something that says reallocate roadway and public realm space, which it does say right now. And then in that, whatever that statement we're going to make about the bridges is, we just need to underscore the pedestrian and bike safety issue.
Connect Nazareth to Pittsford Plaza via Auburn Trail.
That is town.
There's a sidewalk that does connect Nazareth, the campus, with
I must
Pittsford
be thinking
Plaza.
about maybe in the trails section. I don't. Yeah.
Well, you can also get there via the trail that goes behind Pittsford Colony Plaza. So there is a connection that is already exists.
Right.
Disconnected adjacent neighborhoods to the Erie Canal Path. That is part of the ATP in the town portion. Connect adjacent neighborhoods to the Erie Canal Path.
Yeah, I agree that disconnected neighborhoods should get access. I mean, that would be great, but are there any disconnected areas identified in the village? That was the question I had. Everybody can get to the
only neighborhood in the village that, yeah, I think in the village, our neighborhoods are pretty well connected to the towpath.
Right.
And the new trail in the Erie Canal Nature Preserve is another way to access the towpath trail from the North Village and the North Town neighborhoods.
Right, so we don't think we have an issue with that one in the village.
I don't think we have an issue in the village. Amend ATP purpose and goals to include improve access to the canal. Currently, the ATP includes goals for improving access to, okay, we already talked about that. Any other discussion?
Bob, it's Dave. Could I just jump in on the first two bullets of this section? And Renee, your comments with regards to the reallocation on the ATP, the reallocate roadway and public realm space.
Yeah.
Right? That's on page 93 of creating a pedestrian and bike safety culture, the next paradigm shift for Pittsford.
Yeah. Yeah.
It has a little bit more forward-looking commentary than immediate action with regards to the bridges and building out the infrastructure for pedestrian safety crossing the bridges.
Yeah.
In particular, getting families from neighborhoods to the canal. So when thinking about the words and the language that you may add to the ATP as part of the village section, as you think about these bridges, the vast majority of the village residents live on the south side of the canal, and the path is the north side of the canal.
Yeah.
So you have to cross over one of these three bridges. And with language in the ATP that is embedded in this page 99 reallocate roadway space, it may not, sufficient to the PZBA's liking, be strong enoughly worded to suggest that you've addressed those three bridges and the traveling of families, both walking and biking across those bridges.
Yes, I agree with what you just said. I don't think we were saying that the reallocation of roadway and public realm space was going to be a stand-in for adding the strong language that we said we would add
Okay.
about our bridges.
Okay. Thank you.
So I think, so I'm glad you said that.
Thank you.
I don't think we intended to just leave it as that.
As you think about the broad context, that the flow of residents north to the northbound right canal path over those three bridges is perhaps the most integral discussions that we had throughout our work on this, right? And that language we would hope to be sufficiently strong, if not aspirationally beyond what DOT is willing to provide through your conversations.
We agree. I agree, because walking across the North Main Street Bridge in particular is probably the worst pedestrian experience we have currently in the village.
And to speak to, I agree. And to think, my family, the four of us, if we're on bikes coming from South Main, you either have to get off your bikes and walk, but even when you do that with young kids and other walkers coming through, it is a very tight space. And so I know right now in the ATP, there's some discussion about the middle lane there that's kind of evident, but not really used, and trying to reallocate that roadway and maybe drawing some of the language into broader bullets or statements of goals and objectives might be very useful. So we look forward to seeing that language for sure.
Agreed.
Okay.
Thanks. All right, moving on. Add restroom facilities to accommodate recreational use of the canal area. I think that's outside the scope of the ATP.
And it's a good idea, because that porta potty is, there's
Gross.
nothing wrong with porta potties, but I think that is beyond the scope. That's what my notes as well.
Okay, good. All right, moving on to the recommendations for 9.2. Or no, I'm sorry. That would be 9.3. No, I'm sorry, 9.2. I'm sorry. Proposed projects. I don't think there's any recommendations there. Okay, 9.2. See recommendations listed under 9.1. We've covered. 9.3 recommendations. This supports the linear park recommendation in the ATP and Village Comprehensive Plan at the library lot. I don't think we have any disagreement with that. Nope. Okay, can I move on? All right. Policy 10.2 recommendations. Amend the ATP to consider human-powered water transportation. Boat launch for canoes and kayaks, boat tie-ups at Shannon Place, so tourists can get to the restaurants.
I think this whole section of recommendation goes back to the thing we talked about earlier, that the purpose of the active transportation plan is to provide safe infrastructure on our streets and trails. So if we add, I have the same recommendation for this one as earlier, adding some language that any water recreation, whatever, we'll have to come up with the right terms, needs to be, we need to refer to the LWRP vision. Because we can't dive into figuring out adding kayaks and sailboats and ice skating at this point. It wasn't part of the scope.
We've got to stay focused on what the parameters of the active transportation plan were. Okay, other recommendations after policy 13, creation of a pedestrian friendly safe crossing of Monroe Avenue, which connects the Auburn Trail and the historic Lock 62. That would be in the town, which again would be outside of our purview. Do you agree with that, Renee?
I do.
Okay. Where feasible, creation of I agree with it, but it's outside the purview of the village because it's not in the village. Where feasible, creation of a trail on the south shore of the canal. I hadn't thought of that.
Yes, it came up because we talked about accessing Kings Bend Park and the south. There are a lot of private property.
one of the ideas in the active transportation plan was to have a trail through the Sutherland campus that would go along the north side of the canal or north of the railroad and have a non-roadway trail that would go to Kings Bend Park and potentially the rowing facility and Lock 32. It's most of that would be in the town, but I do like the idea.
Yeah, and I don't, the whole South Shore idea didn't come up. I mean, that would be Canal Corporation land, correct? And it would also cuts through residential neighborhoods. And so I'm not sure where exactly they're talking, if they mean in the village or just in general, another, a trail basically on both sides of the canal, which would be awesome. But
That does occur along Route 96 between the village and Bushnell's Basin. So, but again, most of it would be in the town. I think it's more difficult because of the topography in the area in the village on the south bank of the canal and where homes are located. Addition of a pedestrian bridge crossing the canal between the North Main and State Street bridges. Again, going back, this has been a popular idea for a long time. When we studied this, when we did our 2002 comprehensive plan, there was actually a pedestrian bridge in the city of Rochester that was being abandoned that we could have achieved for free. So we looked at both the costs of doing it, which today would probably be about $2.5 to $3 million, which is 3.5 times the size of the annual village budget. But the other engineering challenge was that there's a significant grade difference on the north side and the south side of the canal if you did this, say, behind the library. And the problem is, on the south side, to get a handicapped accessible ramp that would have to be hundreds and hundreds of feet long, there really isn't real estate where you could actually feasibly put it. So it's a nice idea, but in my own personal opinion, I don't think it's financially feasible. More importantly, I think it's engineering. It would really, really be a challenge.
Bob, if I may,
Other
this is Dave Marshall.
Yep.
This, what you're working through right now, numbers 1 through 8, as well as 1 through 6, are carbon copy of the LWRP. And specifically, the section in the LWRP simply references that we have many partial trails connecting some of its areas to others, but valuable links which would create a continuous network of trails are missing. Suggested additions / changes include, and then you see 1 through 8. So what we're tasked with the consistency review is identifying what's in the LWRP and then saying, are these things addressed or not addressed in the ATP? If so, why? Is it consistent? So one of the challenges is, are we held to the standard of addressing these items if this was the document, the ATP, that otherwise would have addressed them? And so to some extent, it's this, chicken and the egg. Maybe these things are no longer feasible, but they're still in the LWRP as suggested additions or changes.
I think the answer to that, Dave, is I think you can discard them as long as we've given them thought and determined, do they make sense at this time or not at this time? But at least you've checked them off and you've looked at the issue. And then I think it's up to you whether you say yes or no.
And I think then to that end, it would be helpful if, Renee, when you're taking these notes, even if it's just 5 to 10 words, putting a comment down, considered, not considered, here's why it's not in there, just so that we're not caught up with, did the ATP even think about it? And
Right.
So by doing this work today, you clearly are, and it's just a question of making sure that we're aware of that and why they weren't included.
Okay. All right. Can we move on to the next one? I think we've beat this one to death. The North Main Street Bridge, I think we're all in agreement on that, on both the lighting and the sidewalk issue. Number 5, creation of a better means to get it across the canal between the railroad track. Okay, that one we've talked about also. Gaining a right-of-way in front of the DOT facility between Monroe and Clover as detailed above.
Wait, what
I'm
are
not
we
quite
saying?
sure what that one,
What's my note about the creation of better means to get across the canal, railroad tracks, and Jefferson Road? That to me sounds like they're talking about the town, but is that
that's
in
in the
the
town.
LWRP? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
That's
I just
out
didn't
of
know
our
what to put
purview,
in the note.
Pittsford.
Okay,
Gaining
thank
a
you.
right-of-way in front of the DOT facility between Monroe and Clover. Oh, okay, this is about the bypass. Okay, at the time the LWRP was written, the towpath completely bypassed around the DOT facility. Since that time, the town negotiated with DOT to have the closable canal route that now partially goes through the DOT facility. So this has changed, and this is one of those other things, statements in the LWRP that is now obsolete. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? Because that goal has been partially achieved. Okay, number 7, connection of the surrounding neighborhoods to the village center through creation of needed linking trails, a bridge across the canal at the floodgate at the former Auburn Rail Trestle, and a pedestrian bridge across the east end of Jefferson Road. East end of Jefferson Road. Okay, that would be at Cartersville, at East Street and Jefferson Road. Again, I would say that is in the town of Pittsford and outside of our purview in the village. Creation of a trolley and or water taxi service to link outlying activity centers with the village center. This could be a multifaceted project with water taxis being used both for transportation and for short leisure rides. I think we already have a tour boat. We have two tour boats that stop in Pittsford right now. 25, 30 years ago, trolleys was an option that was experimented with in places like Saratoga Springs and Canandaigua. They weren't successful, and financially they weren't feasible. That's why they don't exist today. So again, I would say this was an idea that's dated due to the time the LWRP was written. I think the emphasis of the active transportation plan is, rather than using trolleys or water taxi services, is to get people to walk and bike into the core of our community. I think that's the
And to
goal.
use the public transit, which is covered.
To use public transit. Thank you.
Existing, yeah. And the new RTS, Reimagine RTS, is going to have almost like a shuttle kind of option anyway in the Pittsford Mobility Zone. So this is,
Thank you.
all right.
All right. Better canal access points for car top boats. I think that goes along with our kayak discussion earlier. I think we've covered that. Improved access to the community's economic development sites. I think that's exactly what the ATP intends to do by enhancing and restoring the walkability of the village core business district in all the things that are mentioned here under bullet 3. Support increased offerings to rent and lease boats in the community via that I think clearly is outside the parameters of the ATP. You agree, Renee?
Street tree landscaping. We do mention street trees in there. In fact, some of the suggested.
No, I think all those things are in there. On bullet 3, I think all those things are already in the ATP.
Oh, so we're saying it's already been addressed.
Yeah, it's already addressed.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I'm not good at taking notes. I'm not good at much tonight, apparently. Okay, I'm checking now. I'm with
I'm
you.
going too
Keep
fast.
going.
Just ask me to slow down too. I'm
You're
just trying
good.
to get through this. All right, bullet 4, support increased offerings to rent and lease boats. I'm saying that's outside the parameters of the ATP. Okay, bullet 5. Develop visitor services, including public orientation kiosks, restrooms, and again, I would say that is outside the parameters of the ATP. Bullet 6, Develop winter recreational activities. Again, I would say that is outside the parameters of the ATP. Section 4, pages 1 to 24 has many specific recommendations. Can someone remind me what any of these are? Are these things that we need to go over? Anybody?
These are
Steve?
under recommendations.
From the LWRP, pages 1 to 24. Anything specific from planning board members that you want us to consider?
No, that one's too broad for me to chime in quickly.
Okay. Can we move to the next one? Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
It was simply, if anybody on the, yeah, no, move on.
Okay. Section 4, page 19, stoplights at both ends of Shane Place. This is a topic that Renee and I have been in dialogue with DOT with. We would like them to leave stoplights after the bridge is rebuilt at both ends of Shane Place. I think it's aspirational, but I agree with it. Renee?
Yeah, and I think I definitely chimed in on this. Is it not in this document? It must be in the other document that we have to go through. There's no harm. I don't know why it wasn't included in the ATP. I would love to see stop signs there. I know we keep getting pushback, but I will take anything at those. And
our consultants, we asked for it in the ATP, and our consultants took it out. And so, yeah,
we'll add it back in. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Those are my notes. Gotcha. Keep going.
All right. Appropriate alternate modes of transportation, such as buses, trolleys, water shuttle, and taxi, among others, should be identified and implemented to reduce the number of automobile trips and to accommodate high peaks of pedestrian. I think we've dealt with this in some of the other bullets that we've already addressed. And since there was a question from the public, before we go to the
wait, before you do that, Bob, I think you missed the third. Did you cover the third bullet? And I just forgot to take a note.
The town and village will identify potential conflict areas where vehicular and pedestrian interaction occurs and upgrade pedestrian movements to an equal or greater priority than vehicle movement. I think we agree with that. That is exactly what we said in our complete streets adoption.
Right. So what is my note for this one? We agree. That's what the whole plan is about. That's what the active transportation plan is about.
That's the whole purpose of the whole plan. That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, just a comment there. So in the LWRP, this is under proposed land. I'm sorry, it's just under number 7 bullet in section 5, specifically traffic calming. So
yeah,
with regards to the bridges in particular, but also the main intersections, our question was, does the ATP go far enough to identify the concerns to pedestrian safety and bike safety in a way that is convincing to the DOT as to the need to encourage appropriate design standards at the specific for the pedestrian and the bicyclist. And it was really more than anything about access and connectivity to the waterways, which is what the LWRP is tasked with. And it felt like the plan was light in drawing the necessity of attention to that.
I think our consultants were conservative in this area, David, and I think as members of the village subcommittee on the ATP, we tried to push. And I still feel that, one of the biggest safety issues in Pittsford is the four corners for everybody. Mm-hmm. So I think that's something that's worth taking a look at and reinforcing the strength of this statement, because I think there certainly is a consensus among village residents that we could do better, even if it is in conflict with DOT's current policies.
Right, and we can do that without being super prescriptive. We can underscore how vital this is to not just the connectivity, but the safety and the quality of life and all of those things and equity. We can underscore all of that without saying we need to put this exact thing in at this location. So I think somehow we need to, what I hear from Dave is that the planning board is concerned that the language is not strong enough, particularly with regard to how we connect to the canal, which is what the LWRP is charged with. So we can write up something for the 12 or for Four Corners and for the bridges and which is where we connect to our canal right now.
And I have one
Agreed.
question, and sorry to belabor it, but to the extent that the ATP is suggesting a redesign of the bridge infrastructure, does the DOT then attempt to simply do maintenance and keep it consistent so that they're not subject to an LWRP review? And thus, the more aggressive you are in the ATP, the less likely the DOT is to actually do anything in your favor because they would not want to be subject to an LWRP review.
When's the last time we
Well-
did an LWRP review on anything the DOT
Never.
did?
Never. Right. So that, I guess that's what I'm asking is if we're aspirational
Well-
and
Let me just tell you, David, what our consultants told us during the ATP project. One of the reasons they gave for weaning us away from some of our more radical ideas was that they said if we go too far out there, that DOT would discard the validity of the whole document. And so they encouraged us to be more realistic in the recommendations that were included. But I think in the thorough thought that has been given to this topic, we realize that this is an evolving science in traffic calming. And so we don't want to lose the aspirational goals of our eventual goal to have a slow moving traffic and a walkable village center.
okay, thanks.
Okay. All right. There was a public comment. If that person is still would like to make a comment, we can take that comment now.
Oh, hi, it's Elisa Plummer. Was that, Dorothea, was
You
that,
have the floor, Elisa.
was I
Hi,
first? I'm sorry, I just jumped in.
Yep,
I'm
Elisa,
sorry.
you are the one.
Okay. I think some of the things we're discussing, and you're saying it's in the town, or, some of the aspects of the LWRP are actually particularly sort of more recreational oriented, as you've discussed, and also are more germane really to the comprehensive plan. So I just want to kind of throw that out there to the group. It's not that we're discounting this. It may go in some other, planning document that we have. That's all I'm saying. And maybe we should take a look. I'm trying to remember, the comprehensive plan feels like it was, years ago, whether or not we really addressed this significantly relative to the LWRP, some of these things.
Do you mean, Elisa, in particular, our bridges and the Four Corners and the connectivity there?
No, I'm talking about things like ice skating, the canal
gotcha.
access things. So many of these things are wonderful, and
Yes.
we want these. And
Agreed.
so if we're saying here, geez, is kind of in the wrong place, there has to be a place for that, and maybe that's something that we kind of say, let's set this aside so it may be reviewed with the comp plan, just perhaps as a down the road an update to incorporate it, to make sure that we're really covering these bases, because the LWRP is an important document.
Agreed.
And I
That's
think
all,
that-
throwing it out there, yeah.
That's a really good point. And I think the ice skating idea and also the public bathrooms, I think, are in the comprehensive plan. If not,
They
it
are.
came up. Okay, yeah.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That's why I'm bringing it, because it's like a little light bulb went off in my head, barely, a small synapse anyway. And I'm like, I think, we did kind of address it, but maybe we want to just, at some point in a little update or an amendment, just beef it up with some of these things from the LWRP, because I don't know that it's been as thoroughly addressed. I also did want to say, in terms of canal access, we did speak to, and I don't know if it, I'm trying to remember, we did speak to bikers on the canal, the canal path accessing the Auburn Trail because, and this was actually before, the whole park, trail went in, the idea that they could access it by the DPW building and then go right up onto the trail. And we had spoken about wayfinding, for bicyclists and for walkers to be able to do that. And I think that may have gone in the comp plan instead of this one, but maybe that should be something to be considered.
Okay,
That's
thank
all.
you, Elisa.
Yeah.
That's all.
Signage,
Thank you.
signage is mentioned in the ATP too, but it's good. I think it's, I remember from the comp plan, the wayfinding in particular. Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks, Elisa.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your hard work.
Thank you. Okay, do we want to switch over to the other document, Renee?
Well, we should
The
do a
August
temperature
11th.
check. We should do a temperature check with everybody else. The other ones I think are easier. That's why we put it second. So I don't know if you guys have energy I mean, the priority was to address the LWRP concerns. And then, obviously we want to get through these comments as well, but we can do it another time if it's too much for everyone.
How's everybody doing? Would you like to go forward or what would you like to do? I'm okay with going forward.
Me too.
Okay.
Yes, I'm
All right,
fine.
let's go
I
ahead.
don't know that I have that document though in my packet. So I'm going to have to look.
It was the first one. So we started with this. So
Okay.
just go back to the very beginning. I gave them to Dorothea in the wrong order.
Got it.
That's my fault.
Okay.
Okay, then I'm going to
Got it.
start on the first page. The translation, I don't speak Spanish, so I'm going to defer to those who do it much better than I do. But I think we wouldn't have any problem with that.
No, we don't have any problem with it.
Okay, all right. All right. Add local waterfront revitalization program to existing policies. By all means, that should have occurred before. Everybody agree with that?
Yes.
I think it was, I mean, it's in the amendment. What they're saying is beefing up that language a little bit, which I agree with. So
Have no
that
problem
one's an
with it.
easy
Okay.
fix because it's in the amendment, which means it's a Word document.
Okay, so now we're suggested changes to the 2020 supplement. The last sentence of the above paragraph is changed to the LWRP policies include active transportation requirements that are not referenced. Okay, I have no problem with the wording change there. Does anybody else?
I do not.
Following paragraph is proposed. LWRP review must be performed whenever a proposed action is located. I'm not going to read through all this. I don't have any problem with the language in that paragraph. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Comments and suggested changes to the 2019 active transportation plan. Permeable pavement should be used to mitigate, I think we talked about this before. I think where feasible, we're fine with that. Okay.
That's
Replace the word consider in all cases and make it clear that the ATP is indeed a plan. And what would you like to replace the word consider with? My only hesitation is in some situations, because we have to get approvals from other entities, we may not be able to guarantee an outcome in a particular time. Any suggestions?
I think consider is the appropriate term. Or, I mean, I noticed the LWRP sometimes used explore, or I can't remember if that's what it said, but I think consider is an appropriate term because things change over time. And again, if you add one traffic calming measure, it may change your earlier recommendation for something else.
I know the point is we don't want passive language that makes it sound optional. And
Yeah.
I think the point is we want the strongest language that's precise that will help us achieve the goal. Pedestrian crossings, add stoplights again at each end of Shane Place. This is recommended in the LWRP and would improve bicycle and pedestrian safety and connectivity to the Erie Canal. I don't disagree with that. Everybody okay with that?
Agree.
Add to recommendation, replace or move. Thank you. Replace or move larger electrical boxes from head height at Sutherland and Jefferson. That's a safety issue, and I think we all agree on that.
Can I
Change the signal.
interject here? Hold on one moment. Can
Sure,
I?
Dan, go ahead. Yep.
It seems like we're doing this work in real time. Might it be better for us to review it on our own and then come together and talk about any differences that we have or changes that we have? Because reading it and just working, I mean, doing our homework and showing up, there's an old saying, don't do your homework in the meeting. I'm wondering if that's what we're doing right now. So maybe we could just come with any changes, because we have other things to cover tonight and we're 2 hours into the meeting.
I already did my homework and I have all my notes. So if you want to take this offline, that I'm totally fine with that. But the purpose of tonight's meeting originally was to go over these things. The planning board has been waiting for us. So if you want to do that, what is the best way to?
Yeah. So I'm sorry, Renee, I just want to be careful with this. I don't want to take it offline. I do want to have a public meeting about it. Just maybe having done the work before we come to the public meeting, then we can just talk about the exceptions. Just as a way of, because we have other things we need to cover 2 hours in.
I think a way we could do it more, having read, I made a few notes myself when I read this through before. One thing we could do that would make it go more quickly is if we could just, any of the trustees, who, if you have a concern, we'll move to that bullet and I'll let everybody talk and articulate your concern, and then we'll just assume that we approve the rest unless someone has an objection. Okay?
Yeah,
can we do that?
That's what
That should be fair. I only have a few notes, and let's do that. Okay?
Renee, are you comfortable with that, or do you think we need a?
That's great, and I'm fine with if no one had time to get through all of this. I understand that too. So if we need to do, I love your suggestion. That's what we ended up doing with a lot of the suggestions for the zoning code, and it worked out great. So do we want to do what Dan suggested? This is only 3 pages long, so doing our whole, like having everyone take notes. If you haven't already, we can defer until our next meeting, like Dan was saying, and we could address them there.
Well, I have a couple questions that I wanted to ask the planning board, just because I wasn't sure what they were trying to do.
Okay.
Maybe I could just at least ask that. On page 81, develop a parking master plan to rationalize parking in the village business district and improve bike lanes. I wasn't sure, what are the specific goals? What are we trying to do here?
The
Anybody?
parking, yeah, so my recollection of that was the parking master plan had a lot to do with parking per square footage. I know in the ATP, one of the considers, in fact, is to consider adjusting the parking requirements to 2 to 3 parking spots per 1,000 square feet, rather than, I think right now is 5 in the code. I forget what's in the code. And then also addressing the parking along the main arteries such that it might allow for a bigger bike lane, possibly even a segmented bike lane. So the question is should we, in the ATP, embed in some comment to the master plan, the parking master plan, as a way to try to add bike lanes along the main arteries and or side streets? Like, do those two things go hand in hand?
Well, I think the the challenge is that I think we had a considerable discussion a year ago when we did the comp plan and the zoning about parking formulas, because different areas of the village have different constraints as far as parking is concerned. Some areas have overflow in other places, there isn't much on-street parking available. I think the convenience parking in most traditional downtown areas is viewed as an important resource for the economic viability of retail, and particularly in entertainment retail, which seems to be the growing niche here in the village. I would rather see a bullet that would focus on reducing pavement space granted to overly wide traffic lanes as a way of acquiring safe routes for bikes. And also, it underscores the need to slow speeds and do general traffic calming.
And I think on page 81 within the ATP, so I'd agree with that. And on page 81, specifically, it's under the traffic calming strategies.
Mm-hmm.
Does the parking master plan have an influence on traffic calming strategies? And to our comments earlier about adding bike lanes and maybe stealing some of the current like automobile space for these other things, is there a benefit to trying to add a bullet to the ATP that specifically says develop a village parking master plan, and maybe give reference to how that may affect and add positive and be a positive thing for traffic calming?
Yeah, because on-street parking is a traffic calming element. It significantly slows down traveling speeds on streets that have parallel or diagonal parking along them. So I think I would say update the parking master plan to conform to both the ATP and the LWRP.
And I think a bullet to that would be helpful, because it may be that the prior master parking plan didn't take traffic calming as a primary goal of the outcome, but rather,
You're right.
Right, rather just businesses and foot traffic, and how can we encourage that? So if the parking plan, a new parking plan, one goal is traffic calming as part of that, frankly, that just means more feet on the ground, more people walking from farther away, quite honestly, in many respects, with desirable, anyway, so I'll leave it at that, but that's what we meant by that.
Great, okay. The only other comment I had in this, there's a detail for a type of catch basin on the side of the road. Again, we'd have to make sure that's permissible under New York State highway and traffic law. Just some research that we'd have to do, but I get the point of that. And the only other comment I had was on page 90. There are too many curb cuts along State Street in South Main in the village. Can they be reduced? The idea of there's a balance between having curb cuts and having multiple ways to move around in vehicles and cars. The old thinking in a suburban context was minimize curb cuts and have all the access points centralized. That's actually less walkable because you have more traffic at side intersections than you do if there's multiple curb cuts. I think a more seasoned approach and a more current approach is to allow multiple curb cuts, but slow the traveling speeds down so it doesn't become a safety issue for pedestrians that are crossing the driveways. So it's not, I guess what I'm saying here, it's not black or white. It really is a gray issue. Okay. The other questions I can submit. Anybody else? Yeah, I see a hand. Lily?
Lily,
Go
Lily.
ahead.
Yeah, it's just me. Yes, I just want to reiterate what we just talked about regarding parking on the main arterials, and that is what, as Bob pointed out, we've always addressed it, used it as a traffic calming measure. I'm sorry, my battery's going low. We're having all sorts of issues here. As a traffic calming measure, and to remove them would have the opposite effect that I think that we're after.
I don't think,
Yeah,
at least, I don't think we were suggesting removing them as, at least our thoughts were just simply revisiting the parking master plan with traffic calming in mind, not necessarily not removing them,
Okay.
but trying to design them in context or in concert with bike lanes and bike transportation as part of the ATP.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Just one other comment. We haven't talked about it tonight. It is in the active transportation plan, but anytime in the meetings with DOT, when we ask for bike lanes, they're like, well, we'll just eliminate the tree median between the curb and the sidewalk, and we'll put the bike lane there. That's counterproductive for all sorts of reasons. It visually widens the roadway. We lose the traffic calming and aesthetic effect of the trees. It changes the scale of the road. So I think we all agree that that is not a good option.
Agree.
Can
Okay.
somebody walk through the process?
Any
of
other
what
comment?
Can somebody walk through the process of what happens next? So we document responses, and Dorothea and Renee will work on that together. And then we send those back to the planning board. And do we then propose to meet to go through that with them, or is just our written response enough? What then happens after we deliver in some manner these responses?
Well, I think then the next step is the planning board has to make an official determination of whether with our responses, the plan is in conformance with the LWRP.
We need to decide what form our response is going to take. Going back to what we said at the beginning of this review, how are we going to provide the feedback? Are we going to, these things that we agree with, particularly for the LWRP portion, like how are we going to provide that to the planning board in a way that's, acceptable to them to be able to say, yes, it does comply with the LWRP?
I think we give them notes I think we want to keep this moving along. I think the quickest thing would be to compile the notes that we have from tonight's conversation. And I would also suggest that 2 representatives from the trustees attend the planning board meeting. So if there's any questions about as to the intent of our comments, that we can answer directly and continue the dialogue that we've had with the planning board. And then I would ask them to make a determination based on our comments. I don't think the format is the issue so much as it is the content of the comments, because at the end of the day, the plan belongs to the board of trustees. We're responsible for printing it, formatting it, so forth. But the content is what we've asked the planning board to look at and review and determine if it is in conformance with the LWRP.
So this second set of notes then actually we can table that for a little bit. It doesn't, we don't have to get to that tonight. Getting back to what Dan was saying, the broader comments, which are also valid and important, but they could be part of the approval process. We want to really make sure we're getting the LWRP feedback to them so that they can do their review.
Right, because
so that
until they sign off on the LWRP consistency review, we can't forward the document to the Monroe County Department of Planning, which we have to do. And the town, our partner in this, and the administrator of the grant is eager to hold a public hearing so we can close out this process. We can't do that until we complete the LWRP review process.
Okay, so is the best course of action for me to take all of the notes that I took today and give them to Dorothea to circulate, and the rest of you can make sure I got them correct before we forward them on to the planning board?
I think that would be very beneficial, yes.
Okay, so we're holding on this second set, which the memo from August 11th, which isn't LWRP specific, and we're going to first address the LWRP.
I think that's the highest priority, yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right, then we do need to get to the second set, but we're going to do that on our own, and then Dorothea and I will compile any responses we get on that memo, that August 11th memo.
Yeah, we should plan to talk about our responses at a future meeting.
Yep, I gotcha. But put them all, if we put everyone's responses in one doc, that would be helpful, and then we can quickly get through them.
Sure.
Okay, sweet. All right, so I've got my marching orders.
Dave Marshall again. I just have one question, which is with regards to the amendments that the village board may suggest to be included in the ATP. Those would not have an influence, am I correct, on our LWRP review, because they would not be part of the submitted and referred ATP and amendments. Is that correct?
Well, I think we could still incorporate them as ATP amendments. I think they're all good suggestions, so I wouldn't discount the possibility of doing that, because I think all of them basically make sense.
So does the village, does the board here have the opportunity to effectively maybe pass a resolution or something that suggests these are the additions to the active transportation plan that we will bring forward in the joint meeting with the town to submit for approval, right? I mean, how formalized is that process when you're giving us feedback that's effectively suggesting that you'd like to include some things in the ATP, but technically what you referred to us didn't include those things? How specific do we have to be about that process?
Well, we certainly could do that. I think we could make a resolution to commit to that. The whole purpose of having a public hearing on the ATP is to take comment on the final draft and, if necessary, amend the document to reflect the comments that we received that we agree with as the village board. So, we have multiple options here. We also, there's other legal processes that we're somewhat chained to the town with. The consultant, part of their services is to conduct a seeker review of this document, so that has to be done in tandem with the town. But I think in the scheme of things, the suggestions are fairly minor, and I think there's no problem incorporating them into the final document that eventually becomes our official Village of Pittsford LWRP.
ATP.
If that would, once we have those second set of comments reviewed, and I don't know, do you think that's feasible, everybody, to get that done by our meeting next Tuesday? We could potentially do such a resolution at our meeting on Tuesday of next week.
Yeah, the memo from August 11th.
Yep.
Yep.
Right.
To provide to Renee in an email? Is that whom we are addressing? Okay, so we would address it to Renee, any changes that whether we agree or disagree?
Either Renee or Dorothea. I would sort of use Dorothea as the clearinghouse for all this.
Okay.
And so it all goes to one place, and there's a record. Just as a general policy, it's better to have everything go through Village Hall.
So is what we're saying is that we are adding an amendment to the existing ATP draft. So this will, is that what
we
how we're
will
addressing this?
propose an amendment, including the comments received from the planning board, with whatever comments respective village board members make and circulate to Renee and Dorothea.
Okay, so we don't have to go back into someone doesn't have to go back into the document and insert these changes. It will be placed as in the form of an amendment to the existing document.
We still have to figure out the best way to do that. Eventually, we might want to integrate it in. we're still gonna have to figure that out. I don't know at this point the best way of doing it. Once we collate all this stuff, we can decide that.
Okay.
I think the key thing tonight is, in next week, is we need to focus on the content and address the issues that the planning board has raised with us. The formatting is secondary and we can resolve that later on.
Okay.
Okay? Everybody
Yes.
all right with that?
Yep. So I have two
Okay.
action items then. I've got my LWRP. I'm going to type up all the notes from this LWRP comment. I will and circulate them. Dorothea will circulate them to make sure that I got them all correct before we send it to the planning board. Then you all will send your feedback on the memo dated August 11th with the general recommendations to Dorothea, and I will compile them all so that we can do a quick review at our meeting next Tuesday.
And Renee, thank you for being the point person on this and for your note taking tonight.
No problem. Okay, I'm going to go quiet
All right.
again.
Okay. All right. I think we can now switch over to the topic of discussion of the proposed information meeting on speeding. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
That sounds like a yes. Okay. All right. Dan sent out, thank you, Dan, for formatting a proposed agenda for the meeting. That's very helpful and nice graphics on it. Appreciate the work that you've done. Can we go through that page by page?
Yeah,
Dan?
what I'm asking for, Dorothea, can you turn on my screen sharing? My ability to be able to share my screen, because then I can just share the screen and we can just make edits in real time.
You should be able to share already.
I can't. That screen is grayed out.
Hold on.
So maybe you have to make me a presenter, something like that.
Done.
There we go. I've been made the presenter. So let's do this one. And you guys should be seeing my screen, correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So hold on 1 minute. Can you see yourselves on my screen, or is that only on my screen?
You
I can see
everybody.
1, 2, 3, 4 people.
Okay. Is that better? Is that now gone? Okay.
No.
Okay.
Okay. No, never mind. That's not what I'm asking. Okay. So before we start, let me ask a question to the other trustees, because it makes a difference in how we're going to put this content together and how we're going to finalize this content. We're having this meeting next Tuesday, and how long do you think the trustees should speak, and as part of our presentation? So let me just kind of get your opinion on what the ballpark is of how long our part of the session should be before we start listening to people. How many minutes?
This is Trustee Lanfear. I think it should be quite short, because I think the whole, as you explained, the driving force behind this were concerns of the residents, and we're here to listen. And so that's my opinion. I just wonder what's the difference between a summit and a meeting?
It's nothing. So if you want to call it meeting on speeding, that's fine.
I didn't know if it was signified a different format. Okay.
Lily, I'm in agreement with you on that. The shorter, the better, and part of our mission is to educate. So, but what I'm trying to avoid is us talking for an hour and telling them all the history of everything that's ever happened.
No, I agree.
Yeah, and because
I agree.
And okay, so Renee agrees as well. So, but I do think there's some information that we need to get out there. So I don't know, 10 minutes at the most, 15 minutes. I just want us to keep that in mind as we go through this, because otherwise it could be, the danger could be to write too much.
10 minutes.
I think 10
Target.
10 or 15 minutes at the top end. I think the slides you have, Dan, we can go through pretty quickly, but I
Yeah.
think we don't want to do it in a vacuum, and we want residents to know of all the things, at least some of the things that we've been working on, because we have
Yeah.
given the topic a lot of study.
Yeah. Also, and also remember that after a resident speaks, if they bring up something that we haven't yet addressed, but we have a good answer on, well, then we can say, hey, good point, Bob, or good point, Dale. We're also doing the following things. Okay, so I think we're all in agreement. 10 minutes. If it ends up being 12 minutes, so be it. But we want to keep this short. Okay.
Correct.
And I think one other comment I have, Dan, is I think if we can just sort of cut to the chase, we don't need to bullet everything we've done in the past. But I think in going through the active transportation plan, our recent discussions with DOT and our discussions with the State Street residents and the Sheriff's Department, I think we've come to conclusions, some conclusions. And I think with the slides that you proposed, I think we can summarize them pretty quickly, because
Yeah,
we want to make the residents aware of the constraints that we have. Okay.
Right. So this is, something like this. This slide would literally take 15 seconds. Here are our goals for today. We're here to listen to you. We're here to educate you as to where we are and what we can do. And we need to come up with some actionable items. We're taking notes. We want to hear your ideas. Let's go. Like that. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that, right?
Could I just
Okay.
propose some wording changes here, Dan?
Yes, sir. Sure.
The first one's great. Listen to you. I would say constraints. Second bullet is constraints, and third bullet is recommendations, just to keep it simple.
Well, yeah, but there's an education as well. We're not just talking about what we can't do. We want to talk about what we can do. So if we only talk about constraints,
well,
we're missing.
Then maybe what we should do is past and ongoing village efforts, constraints, and then actionable items.
Okay, so we don't want. Okay, so past and ongoing efforts.
Village efforts.
I think that's fine right there. Past and ongoing efforts,
okay.
And come up with
Constraints.
actionable. Easy enough.
I think constraints also, Dan, because we've got to explain to people about DOT.
Yep. Jurisdiction and the fact that we don't have a police department and all those things.
Okay. Yep.
And the last one, just shorten the last one to actionable items. Just eliminate, come up
Perfect.
with. Right.
Well, yeah. No. The challenge there is actionable items is a little vague. Come up with actionable items is a goal for the meeting. All right, it doesn't really matter. It's three words.
That sounds good.
Okay.
It's not a big
All right.
issue, so let's move on.
So overarching theme. Again, this is a 15-second slide. This won't be solved with one action. There's no magic bullet, right? There's no silver bullet that we can fire and it solves everything. We agree on that. It's a combination of things: education, change in design, monitoring, ticketing. What other kinds of things might you want to see here? Or is this enough to get us going? I just wanted to sort of prime and set the stage that, look, it's a combination of things that's going to solve this. It might just be simple enough to say that.
I think that's simple enough. I mean, it's the 3 E's, but.
Okay, what are the 3
I would
E's?
say.
Go ahead, Bob. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was just going to say change in design, I think, is kind of vague. I think it should say change in street design.
Street design or landscaping.
I think street design. Well, I think we could lump that together probably.
Okay.
Because that's part of the street design, the trees and the shrub section.
I agree. I agree.
Okay.
I agree. Okay. Okay.
Now, so then here's the agenda for what we're going to cover today. We want to hear from you, but first some background. Here's the problem we're hearing. What have we done? What do we want to do? What can't we do? This is, to Bob's point, these are the constraints, right? Where do we
Yep.
need your help? Because there are places where we want them to take action, right?
Absolutely.
Villagers' comments, and then to summarize the action items to hold us accountable. Yeah? Anything else? I mean, that's basically it, right? So setting the stage with, here's what we're hearing. It is worse since COVID, and it is mostly happening on the main arteries, and we define those.
I would change arteries to arterials because that's what DOT calls them.
And to avoid dividing village residents, I think we have to acknowledge there's a perception of a speeding problem on side streets as well.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely worse on our arterials, but yes, let's not leave the side streets out.
Yeah, because I would have added South Street to that. I would have added Fountain to that.
Yeah. I think the good people on Rand between Jefferson
And you know, if we're going to say the main arteries, Washington Road, I just, so nobody's left out, Dan, I would include Washington Road. I just don't want anybody to be left out.
Yeah.
You're going to want those as a separate heading. So the main arterials are the first 4, and then side streets would be listed separately. So have 2 subheadings.
Yeah, I don't think we need to list all the side streets. I think you can just say side streets.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Dave. So hold on a minute here. Hold on. View.
Didn't mean to chime in.
No, you're right.
I thought you were stepping away, mister.
Kids are in bed now.
Road, others. Yeah? That's what you were saying, right?
Yeah, I don't know if Washington Road's considered a side street, but that's fine.
Yeah.
It's an arterial.
Washington?
I'm going to leave it the way it was.
Yeah.
How's that?
It's a state highway. It's a state highway.
Yeah,
arterial.
there you go.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So then just side streets is a big bullet. Big
Yeah.
bullet, that one. You know what I'm saying?
We're
There
good?
we go. Perfect.
Yeah,
Sweet.
perfect. Thank you. Great.
Okay, now this is something I can talk through in 10 seconds, but it solves the people who want to see some data. This is data from those radar guns, and this is from a week in August, and this is from a sample of 25,000 vehicles. Now, what this means is this is the total picture, right? The orange these are the volume of cars that are over the speed limit. The blue is the one that are at or below speed limit, and the gray is more than 10 miles over the speed limit. So when you look at this, it is roughly 90% of the people are over the speed limit from our most recent data set. And I think that's an important story to tell.
It is.
Okay, next.
Great.
Next, this drills down a level deeper. So this says, all right, well, how much are they over the speed limit? Here's 31 to 40. This is a 30 mile an hour. This is a 30 mile an hour speed limit. This number, 47% of the cars were at 31 to 40. 41.7% were at 41 to 50. Here's in gray, that's 21 to 30. Here's 11 to 20. So this line here, and I could draw a little line on it, these are the ones at or below the speed limit. This is above the speed limit. We have a problem, okay? And the data backs that up. Now here, I want to show this. This one could maybe come out, but I think this kind of tells an important story because the blue, again, is at or below speed limit. The orange, again, is 10 miles an hour over. This is by time of day, and this is by volume. So what you can see and what this map tells is that it doesn't really matter the time of day. You still have a very small percentage of people going at the speed limit or below.
Right.
And it doesn't appreciably change during rush hour. Doesn't really even appreciably change at 3 in the morning. You still have the same number of people going the speed limit as you do, or the same percentage. And it's roughly 9% go the speed limit and 91% don't.
And one of them is my daughter. I'm the other one.
And one of them is your daughter. Okay, so now for the the data heads, and maybe this can come out, I don't know, but this is saying 90% of the vehicles are going over the speed. Here's just slicing that data a little differently. 43% are going 40 miles an hour or greater. 57% are going 40 miles an hour or less. Only 9 were going speed limit. An overwhelming majority go between 30 and 50. There isn't a great variance by the time of day. We've talked about this. Now, this is the only bullet that I don't even know if we need this slide. It feels like this slide might be able to come out. But all I want to say is this is a little bit misleading because, look, I think we can all agree that 31 miles an hour is not as big a deal as 39 miles an hour. But this groups them all together. You can't, I can't slice it any more than 10 mile an hour blocks. So it's a little bit misleading, but still directionally accurate. Is that
Well,
worth
and what's
talking about or not?
Well, and what's important is that anything above 30 miles per hour are, if a pedestrian is hit, the chances of survival are exponentially worse above 30 miles per hour.
Then I'll tell you what, I don't think this is terribly, I think this slide can come out.
I agree with you, Dan, because I think it's too much text. I think your graphics are great.
Okay. I think the graphics are better. Yeah.
Now here's the rapid fire. Here's what we've done so far. We've met a few times with the residents on state. We've worked with the Monroe County Sheriff. We've asked for more patrolling. They've done it. We have these portable speed sentries. That's these guys. Really effective. You come around that corner up Jefferson, coming up from Bushnell's Basin, and it tells you you're speeding. And I watched those cars all slow down. We've used those fixed radar signs. There's one right near Rand right now. We've had them put an empty police car at state. We've called our state senator who can control those state roads. Bob and Renee have met with the DOT. We changed the speed limit on south to 20 miles an hour. We put stop signs on south and southern. These are all within the last couple of months. So this is not going way back in time. So do you guys want to add a couple bullets? What else?
Legislation is in.
Dan. Oh. Yeah, thank you, Renee. That's what I was just going to say. We've initiated the introduction of a bill to enact a 25 mile per hour village-wide speed limit.
Okay.
We've also, and
Hold on,
one other just, yep.
You can just say legislation in Albany to lower speed limit to.
Enact a village-wide 25 mile per hour speed limit.
Well, what's important about that is that it's on state roads. We can change, as evidenced by South, we can change that.
Right.
One other just grammar issue. DOT always hates it. Call them do NYSDOT all in caps.
Okay.
Other than that, I think it's good.
I'm going to put several times because that's true.
Yes.
Okay. What else?
I think that's a good summary. I mean, we could go on, but I think that's enough just to give people to understand that we've been active on the issue.
And I actually want that in the title in the past few months.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So we don't have to go back to studies from 2007. This is since COVID. Okay.
Right.
Now I have a placeholder in here because I don't know what is the active transportation plan and why should you care in 30 seconds to a minute?
It's a comprehensive master plan to rethink village streets to make them more walkable, including lowering speeds and improving safety for pedestrians, bicyclists, and drivers.
Okay. Comprehensive. All right. So let's do this in bullet. Comprehensive plan to rethink village streets. What's next?
Let's see. I wish I could just recite that again. To lower traffic speeds and calm traffic, to lower vehicular speeds and calm traffic.
Okay. What will enacting it, why does passing a plan do those things?
Because it is, once you officially adopt it, the New York State Department of Transportation and other state entities need to consider your plan.
Okay. In final stages of approval.
Wait, we're missing the main purpose of the active transportation plan, which
Right,
is
thank you,
to
Renee. Yep.
make it safer for pedestrians and
Pedestrians and bicyclists.
pedestrian cyclists and public transit users.
Multimodal users, right?
Yeah,
Safer for pedestrians.
cyclists and mass transit users. And we should also care, because this is a joint village town plan, which means that this is a paradigm shift for the town in recognizing that this is, well, you don't want to, that's too many words, but I'm giving you something. It's a joint, it's notable because the village and town together are recognizing that village issues are speeding issues and,
Okay.
all that stuff.
Okay.
Yes, that's perfect.
Good enough. And I'm going to circulate this and we can make word edits. I'll circulate the revised version. You've seen 2 drafts of this. Okay. What do we want to do? What we want to change the design of the entryways to the village, right? In a perfect world, we would slow everything.
The gateways.
Gateways? You want to call them gateways?
That's what we call it in the ATP, and that's what NISDOT calls them too.
Okay. Explore the use of cameras to issue tickets. I mean, it's worth looking at. We're not saying we're going to do it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I might put that one further down.
Okay.
But that's okay. We can leave it there for now.
And I would, instead of just calling them cameras, let's call them what they would be, which is speed cameras. And we're not trying to be Big Brother. We're trying to monitor speeds.
Is there any kind of rethinking while these bridges are being built, or did I make that up?
No, you did not make that up. NISDOT is asking for our feedback, just like they did in December and whenever that was last year, for public input. And they look at our active transportation plan, even though it's in draft. They looked at our pedestrian safety plan. So we are rethinking these. Actually, anytime any road is resurfaced or restriped, we have an opportunity. So I think what do we want to do? Every time we have an opportunity, every time there's a resurfacing or rehabilitation going on, we want to make sure we stay ahead of it to put our complete streets policies in there.
Okay. So do you want this in here again, or do you want to take that out?
I think you already said it in the previous.
Okay.
I don't know. What do you think, Mayor Corby?
I agree. We said it before. I think we're going to try to keep this succinct.
Yeah.
Solicit funding from the state. Is that worth talking about?
Not
You
right
mean
now.
like grant funding?
Yeah.
Eventually, yes, long term, but not short term.
Okay. Well, but that's in what do we want to do? So
Yeah.
it
Long
doesn't
term.
have to be tomorrow.
Yeah.
Lower the speeds on the state roads. We've already talked about that.
Radar more permanent.
Yeah. What is that?
I put that as a question. Like, maybe do we want to do that? Maybe do we want to buy more?
I just don't want to create the perception that we can accomplish something that may not be feasible. Because I mean, I think Renee and I have sort of exhausted conversations with the sheriff's department, and that's one of the constraints we're under, is their limited resources.
I know, but we could buy one of those, right?
It's not that easy, because like so many things, you have to have somebody that's certified to use it. There's legal issues regarding the issuance of tickets. It's not as simple as it may seem.
Okay.
We do own a Speed Sentry, though. The village does. So you're saying we could buy more of those.
Okay.
No, I think he's talking about a radar.
No, I mean, I don't make a distinction. It's a thing that
It is speed radar. They're the same thing. It clocks your speed. Okay, I knew what you meant.
Okay, then I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
we should be clear, because I would support buying more speed sentries, and I think we
Yep.
ought to say that. So
Okay.
that's a
He
good
did. He
idea.
left it in there. Awesome, Dan.
Okay.
The,
One
Okay.
the
step
next
ahead.
one was a PR campaign, and that is it's very simple. It's I know not to speed in East Rochester because there's a reputation there. Oh, those cops are going to get you.
Airport
I
also.
don't know how we do this, but it's something that I think is worth thinking about.
Speed cameras. Just kidding. We can do a PR campaign.
Would accomplish that, you're right?
Speed cameras would be the best PR possible.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to leave it. It's worth being in there.
Yeah,
What
no, I think
can't
that's
we
good.
do? So we're going to call these constraints, right?
Yes, I like that. It's better than what we can't do. Constraint
Yeah.
sounds more productive.
We can't change the speed limit on the arterials.
Without
already-
passage of a state law.
Without, yeah.
And we need buy-in from DOT also.
Can we remove what can't we do?
Yeah, we're gonna
Well,
call
no,
it constraint.
Okay,
Okay, sure.
You do one or the other.
Okay.
yeah, better, cleaner, okay.
Yeah. Or obstacles, hurdles.
I like constraints. I think that's good.
Okay.
We can't easily change the design of the state roads because we don't own them. There are considerations for emergency vehicles and money
And
is always.
funding.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Money.
So where can you help? Now, I just made this up. What do we need people to actually do? Do you want them to contact their state senators? Help us
We
pass
have
the. Go ahead.
We have a petition that I've been waiting to post because I want to post it right before this meeting. On Walk by Pittsford's going to have the citizen petition in support of the speed limit legislation. So then we can take all those signatures, and so I'll give you the link, and maybe you can mention it during the meeting. But after we get all those signatures, then the trustees can write a letter of support and encourage our state representatives to pass this before the election. And we're going to have to start it all over if it doesn't get passed before November.
How about deliver to state senators?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we're not
the-
asking.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
we're going to be delivering it, not the city.
I'd say give us your feedback at the ATP public hearing. That's the point of the public
Yeah.
hearing, and we want to
don't-
hear
Yeah.
from the public.
Yeah, feedback.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, they're also just about to give us their feedback.
But I think it's important. That's an official public hearing, and we really want their feedback there too.
Make us aware when things are bad and getting worse, right? Just pick up the phone and call us. Let us know. Bring
Let
your
us know.
ideas.
Let us know of safety issues and hazards. Right.
Bring your
The
ideas.
other- Yeah,
Go ahead.
show up when there are public input meetings where possible. I mean, I know not everyone can do that, but DOT is going to have some more public meetings, and we need people to show up and give their feedback.
Can I just suggest some grammar changes? Instead of
hold
show
on.
up, I would say,
Hold on.
okay.
Hold on.
Yep, sorry, Dan.
If there are public input meetings with NYS DOT. Okay. Go ahead, Bob.
Instead of show up, say attend.
Yeah, I was about to say that, attend.
You
And then I
don't need the impossible, or if possible, when possible. You don't need that in there. We can say that when we say
Could
the
leave
bullet.
that out, right?
Okay.
And then the bullet that says, make us aware when things are bad. I think let me just think about a better way of saying that. I know your point. I just don't like the word bad, the way bad sounds on the end. And there's got to be a better way of wording that. I just got to think about it.
Can I make
When
this
you see
suggestion?
issues, when you
Sure,
see
go
issues,
ahead, Dorothy.
when we say make us aware of things, also sometimes people call us and they figure they'll contact us and not 911 and other departments involved. And I think they need to be reminded to do that because
Okay,
I'm
good,
constantly
good,
telling
good.
people they need to call 911 as well.
How about just
That sounds
make us
better.
aware and then also, I'll just put 911 and we can talk to that. Hey, when there's a real safety problem, your best response is calling 911.
Right.
Correct.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And I
I
wasn't
don't
sure
know
what
about
you
this-
meant.
Go ahead.
I just didn't know what you meant by the last bullet.
Yeah, I know. That was just in there. I mean, like, here's where that was coming from. I think about the lost opportunity on the improved crosswalks on State and Monroe and Main because we didn't have enough money to pay for it to then get reimbursed by the grant, and we lost the grant. Like, I'm not sure that's worth talking about. We can maybe talk about it if it comes up. That's
No,
what that
'cause
was trying to get at. The words weren't quite right.
most of those projects are happening with the DOT's repaving anyway. So yeah, let's skip that.
How about not if there are, attend future public input meetings?
Yeah.
Okay.
And under the second bullet, how about adding provide feedback at ATP
Sure.
at public hearing?
Good.
And that first one is just sign the petition.
Oops.
Yeah, and you don't need to call it a Walk Bike Pittsford. You can just call the fill or sign petition in support of 25-mile-an-hour speed
Well,
limit legislation.
yeah, I do want to keep that in there to let them know what to look for.
Okay,
So
that's
let me
fine.
do the sign the petition to lower speed to
Yep.
25 mph. Period.
Perfect.
Okay.
Great.
All right. So now it's time for their input, and we're gonna put. I see Bill Smith do this masterfully at the town board meetings. We're asking you to limit it to 2 to 3 minutes. Yeah, of course, it depends on the number of people there. I do expect, and we're going to get to that in a minute, I do expect there to be a fair number of people there. So you say, could you please limit it to 2 or 3 minutes? Now, at 3 minutes, you don't see Bill Smith go, your time is up. When there's a natural break, he says, hey, you've gone on for a while. We got a lot of people to speak. Thank you for your input, that kind of thing. If they then want to speak a second time, that's fine, but I think that's fair. And how are we going to know that they want to speak? Well, you need to send in the GoToMeeting chat that you would like to speak, and Dorothea will call on you and unmute you. To the people who are on the phone and calling in, they can't send something in the chat. So at a certain point, we will say, does anybody on the phone only who's not on a computer wish to unmute themselves and make a comment? All that sound good?
Yes, and I
Okay.
assume that Dorothea is going to be handling that part of it.
Yeah, Dorothea will absolutely handle keeping track of the chat and, hey, this person is next.
Okay.
And then she will unmute them. So Dorothea, you're able, and I'm able to mute people because this can be so distracting with people who are unmuted who shouldn't be. So we can mute everybody, then she unmutes them when it's their turn to speak. Then the last thing, while people are speaking, we as a group have to be somehow capturing the action items so that we can read them back to them. I may even type them up as they're saying them, and so that we can show them on the screen at the end so that we can then be accountable.
Hey, Dan, I've got another minor suggestion that I just think, I like your photographs, but I've got photographs of more traffic, which might be more appropriate to include because that's our topic. So if you want me to, I can email them to you and you can just insert them.
Sure.
Okay.
Also, one of the things that I would like to to get out of this meeting as we take the input, and Dan, if you're taking the notes, whoever it is, but we're going to note as each person speaks, and I want to make sure we're capturing that so we can take that when we are advocating with DOT, NISDOT, and also with for the speed limit legislation to show that like this is an issue, and here's what our residents have to say.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And a certain amount of that will be, because this is a regular trustees meeting, a certain amount of that will be captured by the sort of meeting notes process.
Yeah.
What
Sometimes.
I'm looking for specifically are just underlining the action items. We'll get the rest of it just by the nature of recording it and doing good meeting notes on it.
Okay, sounds good.
Can I make one other suggestion, Dan? I'm just thinking at the beginning, I might add one slide to say, you know, and again, this needs to be wordsmithed. We know there's a speeding problem. It's a serious safety issue. It threatens our quality of life, you know, something like that, right at the beginning, to acknowledge that we know this is an important issue. Because I think that's the whole point of what we're doing there. We might as well just say that right up front.
Right. I think that's the first thing to say. I think that's a good idea, Bob.
Right.
And really, that's what the meeting invitation also says. We've heard you that there's a problem. Let's talk about what we can do about it.
Does
Okay,
the board
great.
wish to entertain comments from the public?
How many do we have, Dorothea?
Affecting or affecting? Somebody?
There's 2 comments.
It's with
Is,
I can
A.
read them real quick.
is it
An A.
effecting?
Yeah, read
It's an A.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, first one, David Ferris. ATP is important because it includes the town, and many of the speeding issues relate to roadway entry points which are in the town. I think that reads to why the active transportation plan is important.
Yep,
David
agreed.
Marshall has 2 comments. Should there be a general topic or line item to discuss a village police officer / force, regardless of whether we would do it or not? People wonder why we can't get more police presence. Where, in addition, he goes on.
That's a good idea. Good suggestion.
Let me
Why don't
finish.
we guys, hold on, so that we can address these one at a time. So why don't we put that as a constraint? And that's a good place to talk about that. No police force. Okay.
He continues on, where can you help support tax increases to provide funding for a village police officer?
No. Okay.
And that's
We
it.
can talk about the specifics of the costs of a police officer because there's some arcane state rules that make developing, you know, having, say, a deputy that would be on our payroll almost impossible, but we can explain that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Dan, again,
why don't I do this? How's that?
Currently, I would say no village police force because we do have the county sheriff's department.
Okay. What's next?
That's all I got.
Okay.
Okay.
So now here's the next thing. We've got to get people there. We have to let people know that this exists. So what I'm asking you guys to do, I'm asking for a few things. One is a village-wide email to our emailing list. This exists. Secondly, I'd like you guys to post it on your Facebook pages with the GoToMeeting information. I'll write up all this copy and send it to you, and then you're welcome to edit it and post it however you want. I think we should post it on Nextdoor to let people know that it exists, on the village Facebook page as well. And I think that's basically all we can do. But I really do want to get the word out and get people there.
We could put it on the 2 Facebook pages for Pittsford Concerns and Happenings and Pittsford Community News.
Yeah. So I'll write up. I've kind of got all that already. So I'm going to write it up and send it and kind of send a checklist, and people say, all right, who's posting what where, just so we get the word out. I do think timing is important. So this is next Tuesday. I don't know, maybe Thursday, Friday Saturday are the times we should be posting this to make people aware. I think we're right at that time. I don't think we want to be more than a week ahead. I don't think we want to be a day ahead. I think we want to be 3, 4, 5 days ahead of it, and then reminders again on Monday, Tuesday.
You're exactly right. Well, I'll post something by the end of the week on my Facebook page.
Okay, so I'll send around an email that has that copy in it, and obviously take it, change it, make it in your voice, or paste it as is. It doesn't really matter. I'll do Nextdoor. Bob, if you want to do those Pittsford parents concerned with stuff.
Will do. Will do.
Yeah, if you can do the email to our email list, that will be helpful, and also
Yep.
our Facebook, our village Facebook page, because I think you have that or Mary has that.
No, I have
Dorothea has it.
I have it. The problem I have is I'm trying to take Friday off. So
Okay. How's tomorrow?
If you can get this to me tomorrow,
Yeah, I'll get it to you tonight.
whenever you can, the sooner you get it to me, the better chance I have of trying to get it worked in and done and on. I mean, if I have to, I will work it Friday morning, but I would really like to get it tied up for you as soon as possible.
Sure. So look, this is going to be a lot to buzz through in 10 minutes. I do think it's about as lean as it can go. I think if we start the conversation and level set right there, then people are going to, I think their questions will be better. I think their comments will be better. I think what it will do is it'll avoid them saying something that we've already done or something like that, you know? So, all right.
Do we just, who's giving who's leading the presentation?
Well,
I
the
think it should be me.
mayor.
I think it should be me. I pushed for this to happen. I wrote the deck.
Interesting.
The
Okay.
words are familiar to me. And obviously there are times when I will point to each of you.
I'll run the meeting. I'll let Dan do the presentation, and I'll run the meeting as far when take comments. Okay.
Sure.
I think
Who's
that's
the
fair.
timer? I don't want
that would be
to
Dorothea.
You don't want it to be Dorothea?
I don't want it to be Dorothea because I think that's sort of a thankless role to say, hey, time's up. I think that would.
She's the one who can mute people, though.
I think it would be putting Dorothea in an uncomfortable spot.
Does someone have
I'm
a
happy
timer?
to. Yeah, I'll just use my iPhone. I'm happy. I'm happy to
If
do
someone
the
can just
timing.
ding it at 3 minutes, then it'll remind me and I can shut people down.
Okay, sounds good.
So
I'm your timer.
Diplomatically.
to be clear, I'm going to do the presentation and point to you at various points in it. Bob will then run the meeting. Dorothea is managing the queue on and the mute button on GoToMeeting. Renee is managing the clock.
I have a question. Are we opening the meeting with this pre-meeting, or is this part of the?
We're going to open it just like a regular village board meeting, and on the agenda we will have a few other agenda items. We'll probably deal with this up front, so we all know a time. We should agree now. What time do we want this part of the meeting to begin?
6:30.
Do we want us, if we 6:30, you want to start
6:30.
it right at 6:30, so it'll be the first agenda item, and everything else will occur after this. Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
So what I will do is I will turn it over to Dan. He can go through the slides, and then I'll take questions when he is done. Okay.
Yeah. And I can share right from my screen and I can advance them. And guys, listen, I will point to you at various times in this. I'm not going to speak authoritatively on the active transportation plan because Renee and Bob have done way more work on that thing. So I might ask one of you guys, hey, could you guys buzz through this slide really quickly? You're more familiar with it.
Great. I'll send you some images tonight when I get home, Dan, so you'll have them sometime tonight of some pictures. I have some car accidents and pictures of traffic in the village.
Sure. Thanks.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Anything else on this? Okay. Any other member
Yeah,
items?
thanks for your
tonight?
work on this, Dan.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay. All right. It's late. I
do,
suggest
but I have a
it's,
member.
Lily's
do,
trying to
go-
get your attention.
Okay, thank
I'm
you.
sorry, I didn't see you, Lily. What's your member item?
Well, it's not exactly a member item. We have to go back to the non-municipal use permit for the library because we did not waive the 45-day requirement.
Thank you.
So we need to
Okay.
make sure that.
Good catch.
Let's make a quick motion. I'll make a motion to waive the 45-degree waiting period for the non-municipal use permit extended to the Pittsford Community Library. Do I have a second?
Lanfear, second.
Vote, Dorothea?
Trustee Stetser,
That's our eye.
trustee Keating,
Keating, aye.
trustee Lampier,
Lanfear, aye.
Mayor Corby,
Corby, aye.
motion passes.
With everyone's permission, since it's fairly late, would you mind if we leave the executive session until next week and adjourn the meeting? Everybody okay with that? Okay,
Yes.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
That's our
Someone
second.
second? Okay, Dorothea, could we call for a vote?
Trustee Stetser,
That's our eye.
trustee Keating,
Keating, aye.
trustee Lampier,
Lanfear, aye.
motion, Mayor Corby,
Corby, aye. Dan, thank you for the work on the presentation.
Motion
Renee,
passes.
thank you for your note taking. Thank you, everybody, for your patience tonight. And thank you, planning board members, for all the input on the LWRP. Okay, good night, everyone.
good
Thank you.
night.